eternal and almighty God, from whom all power and wisdom come, we are assembled here before thee to frame such laws as may tend to the welfare and prosperity of our province. Grant, O merciful God, we pray thee, that we may desire only that which is in accordance with thy will, that we may seek it with wisdom and know it with certainty and accomplish it perfectly for the glory and honor of thy name and for the welfare of all our people. Amen. We acknowledge we are gathered on Treaty 1 territory and that Manitoba is located on the treaty territories and ancestral lands of the Anishinaabe, Anishinaabe, Dakota Oete, Dene, Sulene, Neothog nations. We acknowledge Manitoba is located on the homeland of the Red River Métis. We acknowledge northern Manitoba includes lands that were and are the ancestral lands of the Inuit. We respect the spirit and intent of treaties and treaty making and remain committed to working in partnership with First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people in the spirit of truth, reconciliation, and collaboration. Please be seated. I have some things to table before we move on to routine proceedings. First, I want to table I have a statement for the House. It is my sad duty to officially advise members that a vacancy now exists in the electoral division of Transcona due to the death of our colleague, the Honourable Nello Altamar, the former member for this constituency. In accordance with the Legislative Assembly Act, I am tabling a copy of the notification to the Lieutenant Governor in Council of the vacancy thus created in the membership of the House. I'm also tabling a letter from the member for St. Boniface dated March 4, 2025, notifying me that he has resigned as the Deputy Chairperson of the Committees of the whole House. We will now go to routine proceedings, introduction of bills. The Honourable Minister of Education and Early Childhood Learning.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I move, seconded by the Minister of Advanced Education and Training, that Bill number 6, the Public Schools Amendment Act, loi modifiant la loi sur les écoles publiques, now be read a first time.
It has been moved by the Honourable Minister of Education and Early Childhood Learning, seconded by the Honourable Minister of Advanced Education and Training, that Bill number 6, the Public Schools Amendment Act, be now read a first time. The Honourable Minister of Education and Early Childhood Learning.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I am pleased to introduce Bill 6, the Public Schools Amendment Act. Public and independent schools have a common day to count enrollment, which is submitted to the province for public reporting and calculating operating funding. Historically, that enrollment count date was September 30th of each year. As this date now conflicts with the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation, the enrollment count is being moved to the first Wednesday of October. Thank you, merci, miigwech.
Is it the pleasure of the House to adopt the motion? Agreed and so ordered. Further introduction of bills. The Honourable Minister of Education and Early Childhood Learning.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I move, seconded by the Minister of Families, that Bill number 16, the Municipal Councils and School Boards Elections Amendment and Public Schools Amendment Act, loi modifiant la loi sur les élections municipales et scolaires et la loi sur les écoles publiques, now be read a first time. Good job.
It has been moved by the Minister of Education and Early Childhood Learning, seconded by the Honourable Minister of Families, that Bill number 16, the Municipal Councils and School Boards Elections Amendment and Public Schools Amendment Act be now read a first time. The Honourable Minister of Education and Early Childhood Learning.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I am pleased to introduce Bill 16, the Municipal Councils and School Boards Election Amendment and Public Schools Amendment Act. Currently in Manitoba, on-reserve residents do not have the right to vote or stand as candidates in school division elections. This bill changes that, enfranchising thousands of Manitobans living on reserve. All Manitobans care about education. This bill affirms the rights of every Manitoban to have a voice and be heard in school board elections, which not only strengthens our democracy, but also takes us further along the path to truth and reconciliation. Thank you, Merci Miigwech.
Is it the pleasure of the House to adopt the motion? Agreed and so ordered. The Honourable Minister of Health, Seniors and Long-Term Care.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I move, seconded by the Minister of Finance, that Bill number 7, the Human Tissue Gift Amendment Act, le modifiant la loi sur les dons de tissus humains, be now read a first time.
It's been moved by the Honourable Minister of Health, Seniors and Long-Term Care that seconded by the Honourable Minister of Finance that Bill number 7, the Human Tissues Gift Amendment Act, be now read a first time. The Honourable Minister of Health, Seniors and Long-Term Care.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I'm pleased to introduce Bill 7, the Human Tissue Gift Amendment Act. This bill will update the list of human tissue gift agencies to reflect our current healthcare system in Manitoba, and will ensure the Act applies to placenta and other birth tissue. Thank you.
Is it the pleasure of the House to adopt the motion? Agreed and so ordered. The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I move, seconded by the Minister of Finance, that Bill number 8, the Liquor, Gaming and Cannabis Control Amendment Act, be now read a first time.
Been moved by the Honourable Minister of Justice, seconded by the Honourable Minister of Finance, that Bill number 8, the Liquor, Gaming and Cannabis Control Amendment Act, be now read a first time. The Honourable Minister of Justice.
I'm pleased to rise in the House today to introduce for first reading Bill 8, the Liquor, Gaming and Cannabis Control Amendment Act. This bill will amend the Liquor, Gaming and Cannabis Control Act to allow the government to create regulations prohibiting specific business types from being licensed for liquor service in certain areas. Manitoba's liquor service categories are established by general regulation, which currently provides for 2 license categories: general, which allows entry to all, and age restricted, which prohibits minors from entering. This bill will allow government, through regulation, to designate specific business types as unsuitable to receive liquor service license. Through this legislative amendment, we plan to prohibit convenience stores in urban areas from receiving liquor service licenses. Protecting minors is a priority of our government. The proposed legislation will provide a mechanism for increased safety by prohibiting restaurants from serving liquor in retail settings frequented by minors. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
Is it the pleasure of the House to adopt the motion? Agreed and so ordered. The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I move, seconded by the Minister of Finance, Bill number 9, the Liquor, Gaming and Cannabis Control Amendment Act 2, be now read a first time.
Been moved by the Honourable Minister of Justice, seconded by the Honourable Minister of Finance, that Bill number 9, the Liquor, Gaming and Cannabis Control Amendment Act 2, be now read a first time. The Honourable Minister of Justice.
I'm pleased to rise in the House today to introduce for first reading Bill 9, the Liquor, Gaming and Cannabis Control Amendment Act 2. This bill will amend the Liquor, Gaming and Cannabis Control Act to prohibit the issuing of controlled access cannabis retail licenses in the City of Winnipeg and other major urban areas. This bill supports our government's commitment to safety by protecting young persons under the age of 19 from unsafe access to cannabis. Controlled access stores will continue to be permitted in rural areas, ensuring that Manitobans throughout the province have sufficient access to legal cannabis products. Public safety is a top priority of our government, and so we're pleased to introduce legislation that goes the extra mile towards keeping cannabis out of the hands of underage Manitobans. Limiting access to those Manitobans who are of legal age supports our commitment to socially responsible sale of cannabis in our province. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
Is it the pleasure of the House to adopt the motion? Agreed and so ordered. The Honourable Minister of Business, Mining, Trade and Job Creation.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I move, seconded by the Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure, that Bill number 11, the Oil and Gas Amendment Act, be now read a first time.
Yep. It's been moved by the Honourable Minister of Business, Mining, Trade and Job Creation, seconded by the Honourable Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure, that Bill number 11, the Oil and Gas Amendment Act, be now read a first time. The Honourable Minister of Business, Mining, Trade and Job Creation.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. It gives me great pleasure to introduce the Oil and Gas Amendment Act. The purpose of this bill is to ensure secure, stable, and safe supply of essential fuels for Manitobans. This bill strengthens oversight of operating pipelines that carry refined petroleum products for the use by Manitobans to ensure continued supply. Some of the new duties of the powers include requiring a pipeline operator to notify the minister within 24 hours of an emergency pipeline shutdown, requiring the minister's consent to shut down a pipeline that could interrupt the supply of petroleum fuels in non-emergency circumstances, allowing the department to set standards and inspection schedule. The bill also equalizes treatment of abandoned wells on private lands and with Crown lands. These new provisions ensure Manitoba's supply of fuels remains secure, stable, and safe both now and into the future. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
Is it the pleasure of the House to adopt the motion? Agreed and so ordered. The Honourable Minister of Housing, Addictions and Homelessness.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I move, seconded by the Minister of Families, that Bill number 12, the Housing Renewal Corporation Amendment Act, be now read a first time.
It has been moved by the Honourable Minister of Housing, Addictions and Homelessness, seconded by the Honourable Minister of Families, that Bill number 12, the Housing and Renewal Corporation Amendment Act, be now read a first time. The Honourable Minister of Housing, Addictions and Homelessness.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I'm pleased to rise in the House to introduce the Housing Renewal Corporation Act, Bill 12. This bill amends the Housing Renewal Corporation Act to include a requirement that an owner of a funded building that receives at least 15% in provincial funding or federal funding under the social housing agreement must receive the consent of the corporation prior to selling, demolishing, or changing the use of that building. The amendment to the Act protects Manitobans by protecting public investments in affordable housing and further supports our government's priorities by ensuring that there is an adequate supply of housing in Manitoba and that it remains affordable. Miigwech, Honourable Speaker.
Is it the pleasure of the House to adopt the motion? Agreed and so ordered. The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I move, seconded by the Minister for Agriculture, that Bill number 14, the Insurance Amendment Act, Loi modifiant la loi sur les assurances, be now read a first time.
It's been moved by the Honourable Minister of Finance, seconded by the Honourable Minister for Agriculture, that Bill number 14, the Insurance Amendment Act, be now read a first time. The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I am pleased to introduce Bill 14, the Insurance Amendment Act. This bill is one of a series of measures our government is taking to modernize our financial statutes to enable economic growth and to create jobs. And in the current context, this work could not be more important and urgent. This bill will limit the amount of funds used in side accounts of universal life insurance products, as has been done in other jurisdictions. This bill provides statutory immunity to members of the Insurance Agents and Adjusters Licensing Appeal Board, amongst others, when they take action and act in good faith, as is done in other jurisdictions. And this bill will allow for email notifications, again, as is done in other jurisdictions. Honourable Speaker, as I said, we are pleased to continue the work of modernizing our financial statutes, and I'm pleased to present this bill to the House for its consideration.
Is it the pleasure of the House to adopt the motion? Agreed and so ordered. The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Thank you again, Honourable Speaker. I move, seconded by the Minister for Business, Mining, Trade and Job Creation, that Bill number 15, the Real Estate Services Amendment Act, Loi modifiant la loi sur les services immobiliers, now be read a first time.
Been moved by the Honourable Minister of Finance, seconded by the Honourable Minister of Business, Mining, Trade and Job Creation, that Bill number 15, the Real Estate Services Amendment Act, be now read a first time. The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I'm very pleased to introduce Bill 15, the Real Estate Services Amendment Act. This bill is another step in a series of measures our government is taking to modernize our financial statutes to enable economic growth and create jobs. This bill will correct deficiencies that emerged after the Real Estate Services Act replaced the former Real Estate Brokers Act on January 1st, 2022. These changes will help ensure that the Manitoba Securities Commission has the tools to properly and appropriately regulate the real estate industry in Manitoba. Let me repeat for the benefit of all members, our government is committed to creating a strong foundation to enable economic growth and create jobs, and that's exactly why we're doing this with this bill and other bills that will be forthcoming this spring. Honourable Speaker, I'm very pleased to present this bill to the House for consideration.
Is it the pleasure of the House to adopt the motion? Agreed and so ordered. Just before moving on to committee reports, I have some guests I'd like to introduce. In the loge to my left today, we have guest Mr. Kevin Lamoureux, former member of this Assembly for the constituency of Inkster, current member of Parliament for Winnipeg North, and the father of the honourable member for Tyndall Park. We welcome you here today. We also have with us in the public gallery some members from DASH, including the daughter of our honorable clerk, Rick Yerish. His daughter's name is Emma Carey, and we welcome you here and the members of DASH today. We also have seated in the public gallery from Gordon Bell off-campus program 25 grade 10 to 12 students under the direction of Mark Dewar. This group is located in the constituency of the honourable member for Wolseley, and we welcome you here today. Committee reports. The honourable member for Kirkfield Park.
Honourable Speaker, I wish to present the second report of the Standing Committee on Legislative Affairs.
Your Standing Committee on Legislative Affairs presents the following as its second.
Dispense. The honourable member for Kirkfield Park.
Honourable Speaker, I move, seconded by the Honourable Member for Tuxedo, that the report of the committee be received.
It's been moved by the honourable member for Kirkfield Park, seconded by the honourable member for Tuxedo, that the report of the committee be received. Is it the pleasure of the House to adopt it? Agreed. The honourable member for Kirkfield Park.
Honourable Speaker, I wish to present the third report of the Standing Committee on Legislative Affairs.
Your Standing Committee on Legislative Affairs presents.
Dispense. The honourable member for Kirkfield Park.
Honourable Speaker, I move, seconded by the Honourable Member for St. Boniface, that the report of the committee be received.
Been moved by the honourable member for Kirkfield Park, seconded by the honourable member for St. Boniface, that the report of the committee be received. Is it the pleasure of the House to adopt the motion? Agreed and so ordered. The honourable member for McPhillips.
Honourable Speaker, I wish to present the first report of the Standing Committee on Crown Corporations.
Your Standing Committee on
Dispense. The honourable member for McPhillips.
Honorable Speaker, I move, seconded by the honorable member for Tuxedo, that the report of the committee be received.
Been moved by the honourable member for McPhillips, seconded by the honourable member for Tuxedo, that the report of the committee be received. Is it the pleasure of the House to adopt the motion? Agreed and so ordered. The honourable member for Lodge-Modier.
Honourable Speaker, I wish to present the second report of the Standing Committee on Crown Corporations.
Your Standing Committee.
Dispense. The honourable member for Lodge-Modier.
Honourable Speaker, I move, seconded by the Honourable Member for Tuxedo, that the report of the committee be received.
It's been moved by the honourable member for Lodge-Modier, seconded by the honourable member for Tuxedo, that the report of the committee be received. Is it the pleasure of the House to adopt the motion? Agreed and so ordered. The honourable member for Burrows.
Honourable Speaker, I wish to present the third report of the Standing Committee on Crown Corporations.
Your Standing.
Dispense. The honourable member for Burrows.
Honourable Speaker, I move, seconded by the honourable member for St. Boniface, that the report of the committee be received.
It has been moved by the honourable member for Burrows, seconded by the honourable member for St. Boniface, that the report of the committee be received. Is it the pleasure of the House to adopt the motion? Agreed and so ordered. The honourable member for St. Boniface.
L'honorable président, j'aimerais présenter le 4e rapport du comité permanent des sociétés d'État.
Your Standing Committee on
Dispense. The honourable member for St. Boniface.
L'honorable président, I move, seconded by the honourable member for Kirkfield Park, that the report of the committee be received.
Thank you. It's been moved by the honourable member for St. Boniface, seconded by the honourable member for Kirkfield Park, that the report of the committee be received. Is it the pleasure of the House to adopt the motion? Agreed and so ordered. The honourable member for Kildonan River East.
Honourable Speaker, I wish to present the fifth report of the Standing Committee on Crown Corporations.
Your Standing Committee.
Dispense. The honourable member for Kildonan River East.
I move, seconded by the honourable member for Fort Richmond, that the report of the committee be received.
It's been moved by the honourable member for Kildonan River East, seconded by the honourable member for Fort Richmond, that the report of the committee be received. Is it the pleasure of the House to adopt the motion? Agreed and so ordered. The honourable member for Borderland.
Honourable Speaker, I wish to present the first report of the Standing Committee on Public Accounts.
Your Standing Committee on Public Accounts presents the following as its first report.
Dispense. The honourable member for Borderland.
I move, seconded by the honourable member for La Vérendrye, that the report of the committee be received.
It has been moved by the honourable member for Borderland, seconded by the honourable member for La Vérendrye, that the report of the committee be received. Is it the pleasure of the House to adopt the motion? Agreed, and so ordered. No further committee reports. We'll then move to tabling of reports, and I have one to table. In accordance with Section 49, Bracket 2 of the Conflict of Interest Members and Ministers Act, I am tabling a report by the Ethics Commissioner regarding the Honourable First Minister's compliance with the Act pursuant to a request by the Honourable Member for Fort Garry dated February 19, 2025. Ministerial statements. The Honourable Minister of Agriculture.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I rise today to observe the 3rd anniversary of the invasion of Ukraine. In late February of 2022, Russia invaded Ukraine. This was an illegal act by Putin. This war was caused so much death and destruction. Through this hardship, Ukraine's military leaders and civilians have demonstrated great courage. They fight for their country and they fight for their way of life. We all want an enduring peace in their country. Over several generations, Ukrainian Manitobans have grown and prospered in our province. Today, 1 in 7 Manitobans, including myself, have Ukrainian heritage, which is why this anniversary weighs heavily on my heart. Honourable Speaker, we are privileged that our province is a place of refuge for Ukrainians. Manitobans, recent Ukrainian newcomers have received support from our large and welcome Ukrainian communities. Individuals, organizations, churches mobilized a wide range of resources as soon as the invasion continues to support this day. Manitobans have demonstrated the history of generosity in times of need, and it was the warmth to my heart to see people of all backgrounds come together to support and welcome these Ukrainian families. If you are from Manitoba, there's a good chance that you have a Ukrainian connection. As citizens of the global community, we recognize just how fragile democracy can be. We also know how powerful we can be when we stand up for what we know is right. We must speak the truth. Putin started the war. These words alone cannot be trusted for them to be a lasting peace. Zelensky is our hero. He is fighting to preserve Ukraine as free, independent, and democracy nation. I hope Manitobans will continue to reach out and support community organizations that are working with the Ukrainian newcomers. Until this war is over, and in the years that follow, the people of Manitoba will stand alongside our friends and neighbors as we rebuild their lives. We observe in this being the 3rd anniversary, I encourage Manitobans to remember the people of Ukraine. And for Ukrainian citizens who have come to our province, we will continue to offer our support and demonstrate the commitment to the values of independence and protections of basic human rights. Honourable Speaker, this is a solemn occasion, and I would ask of all those present, please join me in a moment of silence in reflection and remembrance of the people of Ukraine. Slava Ukraini.
Is there leave to have a moment of silence after all the responses? Agreed, and so ordered. The Honourable Member for Selkirk.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. 1,104 days have passed since the devastating invasion of Ukraine. Today I rise to highlight the horrific events marking the 3rd anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. This war has left deep scars, not just in the land of Ukraine, but in the hearts of millions across the world. It is a war against democracy, a war that challenges the values we hold dear, that every person deserves an environment that upholds human rights, fundamental freedoms, and the ability to express their will freely. Ukraine gained its independence from the Soviet Union in 1991, and here in Canada, we understand the importance of respecting sovereignty and the right to self-determination. We know this firsthand through our ongoing work in reconciliation. This is not just about offering support, it is about standing in solidarity with those in Ukraine, with the Ukrainians in our province, across Canada, and around the world. In times of hardship, it was our shared humanity that guided us. Here in Manitoba, we not only opened our hearts, but also our doors to those in need. Our former PC government committed $456,000 in funding to local organizations dedicated to helping Ukrainian newcomers find their footing. These vital services provided the support and opportunities needed to help them rebuild their lives with dignity and hope. On a per capita basis, more Ukrainian refugees found home in Manitoba than any other province. Our former PC government was committed to ensuring that Ukrainians were supported through these hard times. Our current PC team is dedicated to continuing this support and ensuring that you are not forgotten while holding this government accountable during these devastating times. This is not a matter of politics or partisanship. Today, I encourage all Manitobans to reflect on the painful truths of what is happening in this war. Nationality, politics, or ideology aside, we must stand and we will stand united by our shared humanity. The war in Ukraine is not just about borders or politics, it's about the people. It's about humanity. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Tyndall Park.
Honourable Speaker, I ask for leave to respond to the Minister's statement.
Does the Honourable Member have leave? Leave has been granted. The Honourable Member for Tyndall Park.
Honourable Speaker, it's been 3 years since Russia's illegal, full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Russia continues to make nuclear threats and has been accused of war crimes, crimes against humanity, and waging war in violation of international law. And with the overwhelming number of casualties during this war, it is now considered one of the deadliest conflicts since World War II. Honourable Speaker, the apparent war crimes include torture, summary executions, sexual violence, enforced disappearances, and looting of cultural property. Russian forces continue to appear to be aimed at terrorizing civilians and making their life unsustainable. As we enter the third year of this unjust attack on Ukraine, the context is different, and many would argue more dangerous because of the betrayal of the U.S. Canada, along with the rest of Ukraine's allies, must come together to do everything in our power to prevent this attack on democracy. In Ukraine, millions of people are internally displaced. People continue to flee to other countries, and many continue to arrive here in Manitoba due to the support of the Ukraine community, our federal and provincial governments, and many hardworking and dedicated agencies. Now more than ever, we need to remain united in condemning Russia as its crimes of aggression against Ukrainian people. Thank you.
All rise for a moment of silence, please. Thank you. Member statements. The Honourable Member for Burrows.
Today, I would like to recognize the incredible efforts of the wonderful Board of Directors and staff at Sinclair Park Community Centre in my constituency. Sinclair Park Community Centre has dedicated itself to being worthy of the community's support since it opened its doors in 2011, striving to recognize the community's needs and values and have them reflected in the center. The board makes sure that everyone feels welcome, valued, and safe at the center. From weddings and socials to birthday parties and fundraisers, the center hosts a variety of community events. It also provides a space for community members to celebrate Ramadan and treaty days. For the last 10 years, the center has been proudly hosting BGC Winnipeg Community School Investigators Jumpstart Wind-Up with 900 youth and over 200 volunteers in attendance. The center offers many programs at no or low cost to reduce financial barriers for youth and young families in sports and other recreational programs. They have had an amazing response from the community with over 140 youth signing up for their mini soccer programs last year. The center also worked diligently for 5 years to be able to build a new basketball courtyard that can meet everyone's accessibility needs. I invite everyone to join me in applauding Tracy Ball, Abby Ball, Deborah Todoruk, and Tasha Ducharme joining us in the gallery, and rest of their team members for their hard work and dedication. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Spruce Woods.
Jeremy Bray is a 29-year-old from Rivers, and despite being close to my own age and from the same area, our life journeys have been very different. At a very young age, Jeremy was diagnosed with spinal muscular atrophy. Let's be clear about what that is. It is the slow degradation of muscle mass and muscle control leading to eventual paralysis. Jeremy is being encased in his own body. Despite this diagnosis, Jeremy got himself through high school, achieved a computer science degree from Brandon University, and works full-time as a data analyst for Louis Riel School Division. Jeremy and his family got hope when a new drug was approved, but it was only approved for those aged 25 and under. Jeremy missed it by months. This totally arbitrary date has been acknowledged by several other provinces who have supported and approved coverage of the drug for those of all ages, but Manitoba refuses to do so. After the callous treatment by the health department and a massive public outcry, the health minister met with Jeremy in January, but failed to approve the treatment. Jeremy's condition is progressing. He needs this treatment now to keep himself alive. He is not asking for much, just the continued use of his voice, his mouth, and one thumb, the only remaining functioning muscles in his body. The health minister has failed to approve this treatment, so on behalf of his family and the community, we are asking the Premier to step in today, follow the lead of other provinces which have approved this treatment for those over 25 years of age. Please get Jeremy the treatment that he needs. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Tyndall Park.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Today I want to share how grateful I am to my colleagues, friends, and family. 4 months ago, I gave birth to a healthy and beautiful baby, and I'm so thrilled to share that it has been such a wonderful experience, and this is in part because of many of you here in these chambers. Honourable Speaker, I want to thank both the NDPs and PCs and many of the staff here in the building for your supportiveness through thoughtful words, gestures, and gifts. You may know this already, but the Legislature is a very special building for me because I've spent so much of my life here. I used to sleep and play in a playpen in my father's office, the very same office I now have a playpen set up in for my son. It's an incredible feeling. I have early memories of wandering the building, sliding down the halls in my socks, writing letters to Santa at the holiday open houses, and splashing around the fountain out back. I even remember sleeping overnight as a child in protest outside of the chamber doors. And I won't get into the political reasons why, Honorable Speaker, but my hope is to create memories like this for my child. I want to show him and all Manitobans that this truly is the people's building. Honorable Speaker, I feel exceptionally fortunate to have such supportive people in my life. And today, a few have joined us in the gallery and in the loge. I have my parents, my team, my partner, and of course, our guest of honor. Allow me to officially introduce to all of you my huddy buddy, Hudson Louis Lammer Burns.
The honourable member for Borderland.
Years of tearing down statues, denigrating our national history and identity, cancelling energy projects and killing jobs in the name of climate change, woke criminal justice policies that have resulted in Canada now having a higher violent crime rate than the U.S., and so many other woke policies have seriously damaged our country. The Liberals, having shut down Parliament for 3 months and with Canada in a trade war, are set to increase the carbon tax, the Liberal tariff on Canadians, by another 20% in just a few weeks. Liberal economic policies have forced investment out of this country and left Canadians poorer and more in debt than ever. Liberal policies have forced Canada to remain captive to the American market when we could be selling clean Canadian energy to Asia and Europe. Today, Canadian household debt is 85% higher than American household debt, and the average Canadian earns 30% less than his American counterpart. Those in Canada who work in jobs where real wealth is created are tradesmen, truckers, farmers, small business owners, and many others will be the first to feel the impact of this trade war. No wonder, then, that so many Canadians have lost hope, and a recent poll showed that 43% of Canadians in my generation see no issue with becoming American. I love Canada.
Order.
And it makes me angry to see my country in this state. But it does not have to remain this way. We must cut job-killing regulations, eliminate all provincial trade barriers, build pipelines and energy projects, build our own refineries, slaughterhouses, foundries and factories, and cut taxes to massively lower the cost of goods for Canadians and incentivize investment in our country. And for crying out loud, let's take pride in our country. 40 million people on the second largest piece of land in the world should be the richest and freest in the world, people on earth. Let's make it happen.
Order, please. Order. Order. I just remind members first that the member's time had expired and also the speaker's standing, so everyone else should quit talking. The honourable member for Fort Garry.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I'm proud to rise today to celebrate the 50th anniversary of DASH, Direct Action in Support of Community Homes. For 5 decades, DASH has played an essential role in empowering individuals living with intellectual and physical disabilities, helping them achieve independence, pursue their dreams, and build meaningful lives within their communities. DASH, which is headquartered in Fort Garry, currently operates 58 homes across Winnipeg, providing supportive housing for people aged 8 to 74. These homes are staffed 24/7 and offer a family-like atmosphere. On top of housing, they also offer individualized day programs tailored to the needs of their community. They offer DASH Works, a vocational training program that focuses on individuals with intellectual disabilities develop the skills they need to enter the workforce. They also bring together staff and residents to celebrate personal and shared cultural experiences through their Cultural Connection program. It's important to recognize the dedicated efforts of DASH leadership team who join us today in the gallery, including CEO Karen Fonseth and Dorothy Ross, who have been instrumental in leading this treasured community organization. Honourable Speaker, DASH believes in a future where disability doesn't limit one's ability to achieve their full potential or be fully included in our community. On this remarkable 50-year milestone, I want to thank all the hard work of DASH staff, volunteers, and supporters who make this vision a reality every day. DASH's impact is felt not only by individuals it supports, but also by their families, caregivers, and the broader community. I ask all members to join me in recognizing the vital work of DASH and honoring their members who join us in the gallery today. Thank you.
I suppose we must. Oral questions, the Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, our government erred. It's as simple as that. We went forward and followed advice to emphasize prosecution above all. We lost our way in regards to empathy and also lost our way in regards to closure being brought forward to the families of the victims. I offer today our unconditional apology to the families of Morgan Harris, Mercedes Myron, Rebecca Contois, and Buffalo Woman. We will, as L. Harris requested, be better as a party moving forward. And you have my word on that. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
The Honourable First Minister.
The families of Mercedes and Morgan have been exemplary Manitobans. They stood on the side of truth and justice through some very difficult times. We know that the work that has been undertaken to search the Prairie Green landfill has been very respectful of their wishes and has included them throughout. It is also now shown that the project of searching the landfill was always feasible, was always something that could have been undertaken by a government with compassion. It remains to be seen whether the Progressive Conservative Party, going through this leadership contest that they're now underway, will learn the terrible mistakes of Heather Stephenson and take those going forward. But again, it's up to them to show that through their actions now. We know that on this side of the House, we have always stood with victims. We have always stood on the right side of both this issue and public safety issues generally.
The Honourable Member's time has expired. The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition on a supplementary question.
Honourable Speaker, the Premier has had 17 months now to make progress for Manitobans. This NDP government has failed, and they failed to deliver. The Health Minister failing patients, nurses, healthcare workers. We hear this daily. Finance Minister failing. How is he doing that? By raising taxes, bigger deficits, and higher costs. Premier's failing to reveal a plan to deal with the threat of 25% tariffs. No daily announcements, as he had once promised. We are still waiting for the Premier's many announcements, so will he reveal his comprehensive plan to battle these tariffs today, Honourable Speaker?
The Honourable First Minister.
On this side of the House, we stand with Manitobans and we stand against Donald Trump's tariff tax. And boy, are we ever lucky that the PCs aren't in charge. The so-called leader of the PCs just let one of their caucus members stand up in this sacred chamber and talk about Canadians becoming Americans. Yep. Not under my watch, not under this team's watch. We will never be the 51st state. We will always be the true north, strong and free.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition on a final supplementary question.
Thanks, Honourable Speaker. So how do we sum up this NDP party premier's past 17 months? Utter failure, Honourable Speaker. Failing our students on provincial exams, failing patients waiting for surgeries in hospital beds. NDP failure is affecting our healthcare workers. We hear this daily. NDP are failing job seekers with rising unemployment, and now to cap off 17 months of NDP failures, we have a premier that has completely failed to produce a plan to address the tariffs. So I ask the Premier now, will he stop failing Manitobans and please meet the expectations of some Manitobans, Honourable Speaker?
The Honourable First Minister.
So not every PCMLA just clapped for their interim leader. But what's more alarming than that for people watching at home, when I said we would never be the 51st state, when I said we'll always be the true north, strong and free, do you know how many PCMLAs clapped for that? Zero. Not a single one. And it's no surprise. You know, you wish that that PC leadership contest would have something to say about this. But who are their two choices? On the one hand, they have the outsider candidate, now the presumed frontrunner, who endorsed Trump during the recent election. And then you've got the member for Fort White. And what did he say? Just in February, after Donald Trump passed his executive order on tariffs, he said, and this is a direct quote, "I would say thank you. I would say thank you." End quote. On this side of the House, we will always stand up against tariffs. We will always stand up for Manitoba. Meanwhile, the PCs are wanting to cozy up to Donald Trump.
Member, time has expired.
Leadership has devolved into a contest of who can suck up to Donald Trump more. The presumed frontrunner now, Wally, endorsed Donald Trump in 2024. And the member for Fort White, the establishment candidate, said thank you. That is a direct quote. He said thank you to Donald Trump's tariffs. The tariffs are a threat to people's jobs and their livelihoods. Why would any proud Canadian ever say thank you to Donald Trump for threatening our economy? He should not only apologize, the PC leadership vetting team should vet him out of their leadership contest for betraying our country.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition on a supplementary question.
Honourable Speaker, throughout my career as an educator and even today as interim leader of the Progressive Conservative Party, I stand up here day after day confronting a bully, and that's the MLA for Fort Rouge over there, Honourable Speaker. On February 1st, the Premier stood in his spot and announced, and I quote, "New steps every single day this week," end quote, to protect jobs and safeguard the economy. We're still waiting for those plans. I'm not sure if his comms team maybe didn't get the memo to unleash those plans, but we're still waiting for those seven steps. Perhaps if the Premier spent equal energy fulfilling his promises as he does making them, Manitobans would have more confidence. Would the Premier please just stand up today, answer one of these questions, and unleash his plans to Manitobans, Honourable Speaker?
The Honourable First Minister.
We unleashed it that week in February. We announced tax deferrals. We announced the Shop Local campaign. We announced support for Manitobans from all walks of life. Do you know what the membership, or rather the member for Fort White did that same week? He said, thank you to Donald Trump. That's a direct quote. Thank you to Donald Trump for the tariffs. So who's the other option if you don't want to sell out our country in the PC leadership race? Well, it's Wally. And the funny thing about Wally is he says he has 3 MLAs on side. But which are they? Like, for sure, the Borderlands MLA is one of Wally's guys. We can say that for sure. But who are the other 2 MLAs? The funniest part of all is that Wally said that the PC MLAs are lazy. So apparently 3 of them heard that and said, yep, this guy knows what he's talking about.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition on a final supplementary question.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. And it's obvious that the NDP did not listen to your sage advice prior to Christmas, Honourable Speaker. We stand here each and every day and the Premier continues to slander, mislead Manitobans each and every day. Under this NDP party, Honourable Speaker, Manitobans experience the highest rate of food inflation in Canada. Nearly half of Manitoba residents are $200 or less away from failing to meet all their financial obligations. Despite these concerns, the NDP cannot or will not share their secret tariff plan. Honourable Speaker, how many Manitobans have to again lose their jobs under this Premier's watch and their homes before the NDP party or the Premier, somebody on that side of the bench, Honourable Speaker, releases their tariffs plan?
The Honourable First Minister.
Let's be absolutely clear. The threat to Manitoba's economy are the actions of Donald Trump. If you can't even say his name and say that what he's doing is wrong, you are not fit to be part of Manitoba's response. That's right. That's why our team is taking the lead. We're there to protect your jobs. We've brought in a tax deferral initiative. At the same time, we're pushing back against the United States of America. We signed an order. I was happy to be surrounded by the whole team yesterday when we signed that wonderful order to pull liquor from the U.S. off of Liquor Mart shelves. However, on the other side of the House, the member for Fort White is saying thank you for this existential threat to the livelihoods of many people across the country. Thank you to Donald Trump at this moment. That is wrong. But here's the difference between us and them. On this side of the House, we're rallying around the flag. On that side of the House, they're rallying around someone who is selling out Canada.
That's right.
The Honourable Member for Midland.
Honourable Speaker, Monday night was a disappointing day for Canada. To be perfectly clear, I am against Trump's trade war on Canada. A free market approach is always the best approach. The implementation of these U.S. tariffs on Canada will have profound impacts on Manitoba businesses. Clearly, the minister understands that the job-killing payroll tax is a burden to Manitoba businesses. That's why he's deferring it. But this deferral is meaningless when the NDP comes knocking for their check in 3 months. Businesses need permanent relief. They need real action. Will the minister commit today to waiving the payroll tax deferral for Manitoba businesses?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Tariffs will indeed present a challenge to us here in Manitoba, but as our Premier often reminds us, the way we get through challenges is by getting through them together. Right. And that's exactly what our team has been doing. We've been bringing Manitobans together, bringing Manitobans from every corner of this province together in unity to respond to this challenge. That stands in stark contrast to the kind of language and rhetoric we're hearing from those who are vying to be the leaders of the party, the members opposite. They're dividing Manitobans. They're splitting us apart. What are we doing? We're bringing people together because we know that's how we're going to get through this together as one Manitoba, and we're going to merge on the other side of this, working as a whole province together in unison. Good job.
The Honourable Member for Midland on a supplementary question.
If the minister wants to do this together, then maybe they should take our proposal to have an all-party committee so all areas of Manitoba are represented through these negotiations. The NDP is caught between ideology and reality, and it's time for them to quit their anti-business rhetoric. So far, this government's only response to Manitobans has been tax delays, tax holidays, tax freezes, nothing permanent. Manitoba has great economic potential, and we need to unleash it. But this can only be done if the NDP puts their own ideology aside. Will this minister stand up today and commit to permanently eliminating the job-killing payroll tax for Manitoba businesses?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I don't know why we would want to invite them to respond or help devise a response when we know that members opposite are supporters of Trump and his tariff tax on Canadians. Look, yesterday I was really proud to stand with our team out in front of the Legislature with the beautiful Canadian flag behind us as we announced our measures in response, immediately in response to the news that those tariffs were being applied to Canada. We brought forward a tax deferral program. I'm already hearing from businesses and manufacturers about how much they appreciate our quick response to give them some relief, to help give them some cash flow support so they can keep people employed. There's, of course, more to do. Manitobans can count on us to continue fighting for jobs in this province every single day. There we go.
The honourable member for Midland on a final supplementary question.
The NDP and this minister have no viable, realistic, or permanent plan to help support Manitoba businesses. When I asked in Hydro Committee of this minister what his economic plan was, he said he would not speak in hypotheticals. That was a month and a half ago. Well, hypothetical has now become reality. He has had an extra month to come up with a real economic plan and response plan for Manitobans and Manitoba businesses, and he hasn't. We've seen temporary, we've seen freeze, we've seen deferral, but nothing permanent. This NDP continues to hide what their economic plan is. Why is this minister actively suppressing this information from the public when other premiers across the country have announced this for their taxpayers?
Because they have backbones.
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Again, our team is proud to have responded immediately to this tariff threat. We're working together with Manitobans across this entire province. We know that those tax deferrals will support businesses to be able to have more cash flow to ensure that workers can keep working and they can work through this challenging period. We also announced Buy Canada legislation that we'll be introducing soon. We also announced that we're taking U.S. liquor off of our shelves as other responses in response to ensure Manitobans are showing that we will stand up for ourselves in response to this threat. We are going to fight for jobs. We're going to do that together with Manitobans, bringing Manitobans together under the One Manitoba banner, because Manitobans can always count on this team to fight for their best interests. Thanks all.
The honourable member for Portage-La Prairie.
Honourable Speaker, a new $450 million potato processing plant has been announced south of the border in Grand Forks by the Belgian food company Agristo. It's unfortunate that the NDP missed this opportunity to have this plant built right here on Canadian soil. What is this minister doing now to fight the 25% Trump tariffs to ensure our farmers can access this potato plant market tariff-free?
The Honourable Minister of Agriculture.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. And it's always a great pleasure to talk about the importance of agriculture in the province of Manitoba. Today is the day that we recognize all producers, all industry towards added value opportunities in this province, and I need to recognize the importance of food sustainability in our country. And our province is a great contributor to that, between providing food not only today but into the future. The opportunity continues to work forward for business development in this province and across Canada. And we talk about tariff, interprovincial trading opportunities will exist, and I think we can improve upon that in a positive manner for the benefit of the people in our province
Time has expired. The honourable member for Portage-La Prairie on a supplementary question.
Honourable Speaker, we are the largest potato growing province in Canada, yet our yields are down compared to Alberta, where there's a new government investment in irrigation. Saskatchewan is spending another $1.5 billion on potato irrigation, while Grand Forks is getting a new $450 million potato plant. And now our producers will have to compete with a 25% tariff hanging over their heads and carbon tax to get potatoes to the plant. What is this minister doing to keep potato production in Manitoba, compete with Saskatchewan, Alberta, and North Dakota, and still fighting off these tariffs? Thank you.
The Honourable Minister of Agriculture.
Thank you for the question, member opposite. The importance of added value in the province continues to grow in our province of Manitoba. We recently had a conversation with Simplot about the importance of the Portage potato production. And we continue to work with the industry of the importance of what we see is vital throughout the province of Manitoba. We've been in conversation with Alberta. In fact, recently when we were in Sorrel talking about potato production, we met with the agriculture minister from Alberta and we talked about different ideas. And the great thing about the fact is that we've become very conscientious of water usage. And I know, talking to our potato growers in our province, of the importance of being accountable for
time has expired. The honourable member for Portage-La Prairie on a final supplementary question.
Honourable Speaker, most of Manitoba's potato production is exported to the U.S. While our Manitoba farmers will soon be seeing the effect of a 25% tariff, what is the minister doing to protect our industry and grow it like we're seeing happening in Alberta, Saskatchewan, and North Dakota? Why does this minister continue to do nothing for the potato industry?
The Honourable Minister of Agriculture.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. You know, it's kind of ironic for the critic to sit there and say we do nothing for agriculture. Let's go back a couple years ago of the importance of not only the potato industry, but overall agriculture opportunities in this province. And I stress the importance to the member opposite. Do you believe in generational young farmer survival in the province of Manitoba? Do you honestly think that is what we need in our opportunity for make the province what it is today? I do not agree to the members opposite. A 300% increase in crown lands will be a way of making agriculture what it is today. And I question
time has expired. Order, please. The Honourable Member for Selkirk.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. The steel industry is one of the most important industries in my constituency of Selkirk. Our steel manufacturers and related industries employ approximately 800 men and women in and around Selkirk. Our steel is important all over North America, including American manufacturers and the American military. Ever since the U.S. President Donald Trump threatened tariffs on our steel, this government has been silent on its plan to save steel workers' jobs. What is this government's plan to save those jobs in Selkirk?
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Minister of Business, Mining, Trade and Job Creation.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. First of all, we have to stand up to protect people and jobs here in Manitoba, and that's what our government is focused on doing. Yes. Not only, Honourable Speaker, have we rolled out a response plan that is allowing businesses to defer taxes, to taking U.S. booze off the shelves, but also we've been developing a plan for months, Honourable Speaker, one that's working with the business community, listening to their needs. We found a new U.S. Trade Council to make sure that we bring the business community together because, as was very clearly said, as our priorities, when we face hard challenges, we must do them and accomplish them when we work together.
The Honourable Member for Selkirk on a supplementary question.
Honourable Speaker, roughly 800 jobs, 800 men and women who are gainfully employed within good-paying jobs in the steel industry in Selkirk. That's 800 families in my constituency, Honourable Speaker. Most of that steel is destined for plants in the United States, where it will soon be slapped with a 25% tariff. Despite this, there's been no plan from this government and this premier to protect these jobs. What is the government's plan to keep these steel plants open and keep these vital jobs in Selkirk?
The Honourable Minister of Business, Mining, Trade and Job Creation.
Honourable Speaker, we've reached out directly to businesses and steel workers in the province. We know and understand the impact that it has, and that's why it's very clear our government does not support the Trump tariff tax. That's without a question. And that's why it's so confusing to understand and learn what members opposite have been saying and why, and curious to Manitobans, why they're thanking Trump for the tariffs. It makes no sense. They are completely out to lunch. They don't know what they're talking about, and they're completely on the wrong side. On this side of the House, we stand up for Manitobans, we stand up for workers, and we'll do it each and every day.
The Honourable Member for Selkirk on a final supplementary question.
Honourable Speaker, Canada's steel industry is under siege from the devastating 25% U.S. tariffs. Selkirk's steel industry is one of the key economic drivers in my constituency. The employers are under pressure to move their plants south of the border where they will no longer have to pay those tariffs. And yet we see no action from this premier and no plan from this NDP government. Can the government even name the steel mill in Selkirk? No.
The Honourable Minister of Business, Mining, Trade and Job Creation.
Honourable Speaker, we've been working directly with them, and it's very clear to us the importance of those jobs here in Manitoba. Now, let me be clear about one other thing, that we must work together. Remember, opposite did not get that message. What they said when they heard about Trump tariffs, they said thank you. They love the tariffs. That's part of their plan. We do not go down that road. We work together with Manitobans. We support them, we listen to them, and we bring forward opportunities for them and their businesses to succeed, to make sure we have good jobs right here in Manitoba and support those jobs into the future. We'll do that each and every day, Honourable Speaker, to make sure that we protect jobs in Manitoba.
The honourable member for Roblin.
In January, Chad Giffen passed away while waiting for care in the HSC Emergency Department. The minister rushed to reassure the media, claiming action was coming. But weeks later, Manitobans are still waiting for details on what happened, waiting for answers, and waiting for real action to prevent such a tragedy from happening again. The minister told the media on January 24th that an expedited critical incident report would be ready within 3 weeks. It's now been 6 weeks and still nothing. What is the status of the critical incident report on Chad Giffen's tragic passing, and why is this NDP government failing to be transparent with Manitobans?
The Honourable Minister of Health, Seniors and Long-Term Care.
I thank the member opposite for that question. First and foremost, I want to do something that we've done previously but haven't had the opportunity to do in the House, which is reiterate my condolences to his family and to his community. This gentleman was loved by many, many people, loved by his family, loved by many folks in the community, loved by those who he kept around him and who kept him around. And I think it's really important for us to always remember that when a tragedy like this happens, there are people who are directly affected. So I want to express my deepest condolences, and I'm happy to answer more of the questions brought forward in the next questions. Thank you.
Beautiful.
The honourable member for Roblin on a supplementary question.
Honourable Speaker, those are nice words from the minister, but they need to back them up with real action. In their recent white paper, the Manitoba Nurses Union slammed this NDP government for its lack of transparency, refusal to collaborate, and failure to listen to frontline healthcare workers. The MNU president told media, quote, "Our hospitals are becoming unsafe places to work and unsafe places to receive care all over the province," unquote. Emergency room wait times tell the same story. At Grace Hospital, median wait times are now over 1.3 hours longer than the same time last year, hitting nearly 6 hours.
Oh boy.
This morning, waits at the Grace and HSC were at 8 hours. Wow. Why is this minister failing to act on the worsening crisis in Manitoba's emergency rooms?
The Honourable Minister of Health, Seniors and Long-Term Care.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Wait times are down in emergency departments across the city. We're doing the work that is necessary to be done because that member and the PC caucus closed 3 emergency rooms, fired hundreds of nurses, and cut the services that Manitobans depend on.
You're a staff.
My priority has been to make sure that that gentleman's family has the information that they deserve. I've had the opportunity, and I want to thank them for sitting with me in my office to have a conversation. I've had the opportunity to listen to the family directly and to ensure that they have all the information they need every step of the way. Our priority has been to make sure the families' voices are heard and they have the information. We've been providing it to them proactively, including the details of the CI. Our government has taken action from day one. Our government continues to take action since
First time has expired. The honourable member for Roblin on a final supplementary question.
Healthcare unions have publicly called out this NDP government. The MNU says they don't see any evidence of the new hires this government claims to have made. The Allied Health Union says there's a disconnect between what the government says and what their members experience on the front line. But the facts are clear. Manitobans are still waiting for the ER wait time strategy promised in their throne speech.
Wob's shouting you
still
down.
waiting for answers and action on Chad Giffen's tragic passing.
Wob is still
Healthcare
trying to shout
workers
you
are
down.
still
It's
waiting for
unfortunate.
real reinforcements. And Manitobans are still waiting for this government to keep its election promises. Enough with the excuses and the finger pointing and the spin. When will this NDP government stop worrying about their own highlight reels and start worrying about Manitoba patients?
Here, here.
The Honourable Minister of Health, Seniors and Long-Term Care.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. One of the asks of this wonderful gentleman's family was to ensure that we have a relationship with the public trustee that gets information out to next of kin right away. We immediately gave direction to all STO CEOs to review and amend those specific policies as it relates to notification of next of kin. I'm happy to provide that update to the House that policy work and change has been done. And that's based on the direction and the ask of his family. Upcoming schedules are regularly reviewed to ensure that all shifts are filled, ensuring all positions that are on shift have an AED skill set. We've added 44 unit assistants to take vital signs in ERs. Shifts now have a dedicated vital signs UA or healthcare aide. Going forward, there's going to be monthly training sessions for those folks. Waiting room surge protocol was developed and implemented.
First time has expired. The honourable member for Tyndall Park.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. There are certain industries in Manitoba where the provincial government needs to take immediate action, not only to protect industries, but to ensure continued growth. For example, take Manitoba's pork industry. There are thousands and thousands of people employed both directly and indirectly, and these individuals are very much dependent on exports that go to the United States. What is the government prepared to do to ensure the security of these jobs, specifically in this case, the pork industry as a whole?
The Honourable Minister of Business, Mining, Trade and Job Creation.
Honourable Speaker, first of all, we got to do is stand up for our own country, our sovereignty. We can't take the approach of the opposition where they're saying thank you to these U.S. tariffs. They're obviously going to have a huge impact, particularly on our agriculture industries like pork. And that's why we're working with them directly. We've invited Cam Dahl from the pork industry to be on our U.S. Trade Council so we can hear from them and that industry directly to ensure that the policies and the response we have as a province are reflective of meeting their needs. This is the work that we do to be a real government that's taking the concerns of Manitoba producers, Manitoba business people to heart as we move forward and move our economy to the future and make sure that we protect jobs for all Manitobans.
The honourable member for Tyndall Park on a supplementary question.
Honourable Speaker, one of the ways in which we can ensure the future prosperity of the pork industry is to look for alternative markets outside of the United States. For example, we know the Philippines is a country that consumes a great deal of pork. So to what degree is the province working with Ottawa and the Philippines to ensure that we can enhance or grow our export markets beyond the United States?
The Honourable Minister of Business, Mining, Trade and Job Creation.
Honourable Speaker, I think it's really important that we do continue to diversify our markets across the globe. And this is exactly the projects that are priorities for our government. We continue to work with organizations like Cereals Canada to make sure that we provide the expertise, the knowledge, the know-how, and the resources to get our products to markets across the globe. This is the work that we're doing in earnest, in collaboration with industry partners like the Pork Association, like the Beef Association, like CAP. And as we move forward with these initiatives, we're going to ensure that we protect jobs, we make sure we work for producers, and move our economy forward in spite of the threats that we face from the White House.
The honourable member for Tyndall Park on a final supplementary question.
Honourable Speaker, what we do know is that there are a number of industries that are very much reliant on exports, and these industries employ tens of thousands of people across the province. Manitoba needs to identify these industries, whether it be our pork industry, our aerospace industry, in essence, all of our manufacturing industries. Honourable Speaker, what specific actions is the government taking to protect Manitobans and ensure that they do not lose their jobs?
The Honourable Minister of Business, Mining, Trade and Job Creation.
Honourable Speaker, we are absolutely laser focused on protecting jobs here in Manitoba. That goes without question. Members opposite can question whether they want Canadians to move and become Americans or not, that is something that is off the table for us. We are squarely focused on protecting jobs, and we do it each and every day. Let me tell you, Honourable Speaker, that we are working together collaboratively with the folks on the U.S. Trade Council to make sure that we respond to those needs. We're listening to them by implementing the deferral on taxes. We're taking U.S. booze off the shelves to make sure that we support the buy local efforts. These are all concrete initiatives that help protect jobs in Canada. That is unquestionable a priority for us, and we'll do that every time we get a chance to make sure we protect Manitoba jobs, make sure we protect Canadian jobs.
Time has expired. The honourable member for St. Boniface.
Honourable Speaker, yesterday, the U.S. President imposed tariffs on all Canadian products entering the United States. This unjustified and confounding action has caused volatility in the market and has both American and Canadian producers and consumers anxious about the road ahead. But Canadians are united across the country. As we respond to this economic threat, we are united in Canadian pride, freedom, and resilience. Can the Premier update the House on the measures the government is taking to protect workers here at home?
Great question.
The Honourable First Minister.
Et en tant que Canadien, nous répondra toujours dans un façon bilingue. It's a question of who we are as Canadians. So your government is there protecting your jobs with the tax deferral incentive, pushing back against the United States by pulling liquor off the liquor mart shelves from that country. And we're also doing the work of working with the other provinces and the federal government to remove trade barriers. Hopefully there'll be an update later today and very soon on that. But one of the things that we need when taking on a larger adversary is leverage. And one of the ways that you create leverage is by being unified. On the other hand, the PCs want to splinter this country. They got one member today talking about joining the U.S. They got one leadership candidate who endorsed Trump, another one who thanked him. And I would point out in the member's statement today on the Ukraine, their member refused to condemn Vladimir Putin. Unequivocally, he was the aggressor. We condemn Putin. We stand with Ukraine. We stand with Canadians. We're united.
The honourable member for Morton Winkler.
Honourable Speaker, we all want to see an end to the homelessness in our communities and in our province. Last summer, the Minister of Housing, Addictions and Homelessness tried to throw 400 low-income Manitobans out on the street when she personally cancelled the Canada-Manitoba Housing Benefit. This is a rent top-up program designed to help Manitobans at risk of becoming homeless. Now we understand the minister is doing it again. Honourable Speaker, when will this minister properly fund this government's own program to stop more Manitobans from becoming at risk of homelessness?
The Honourable Minister of Housing, Addictions and Homelessness.
Go to Honourable Speaker, and let me explain how this benefit works. So this is a federal benefit that we cost match. So the federal minister was just in the province last week. We've been working really hard to get the federal minister to commit more money to Manitobans so that more Manitobans can access this benefit. Unfortunately, the federal government hasn't come to the table with more funds. We topped up this benefit almost $2 million. We still have provincial benefits that we have. We have the rent assist, we have the rental credit, rent relief loan, we have rental tax credit, something that members opposite didn't do. They're trying to act like they care about folks that are unhoused now.
Time has expired. The honourable member for Morton Winkler on a supplementary question.
Honourable Speaker, every Manitoban deserves to live in a home of dignity, a safe home with dignity. Last summer, 400 Manitobans living in poverty couldn't afford their rent because the minister cancelled the rent top-up program. Now the program is cancelled again. How many more Manitobans are now at risk of becoming homeless because the NDP government isn't adequately funding this vital program?
The Honourable Minister of Housing, Addictions and Homelessness.
Again, what I would say to that member is to ask the federal government why they're not funding that program. We again will continue to provide assistance through the rental assist program, through the rental relief loans, through the rental tax credit, but that member can look across at their colleagues and ask their colleagues why they were selling off Manitoba Housing, why they were boarding up Manitoba Housing, why through one transaction they sold off hundreds of units, why they were okay walking out this building every single day, seeing people living in bus shelters. That member has to ask her colleagues, was she in support of that?
The time for oral questions has expired, and I have a ruling for the House. Following the land acknowledgement on December 2nd, 2024, the honourable member for Fort Garry raised a matter of contempt, alleging that the Premier had failed to provide a response to a matter taken under advisement in the Committee of Supply within the deadline set out in the rules of the House. The member contended that this failure infringed on his rights as a member, and he accused the Premier of being in contempt of the Assembly. The member concluded his remarks by moving that this House censure the Premier for their disregard for the traditions and practices of the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba and their contempt for the people of Manitoba, and that this House order the Premier to produce the information contained in the notice of advisement within 24 hours of the Speaker's ruling. The Honourable Government House Leader and the member for Spruce Woods spoke to the matter before I took it under advisement. As matters of contempt are rarely raised in this House, I will begin by providing some general information for members. Joseph Mangot states on page 14 of Parliamentary Privilege in Canada that contempt can be described as an offence against the authority or dignity of the House. Further, as Bosque and Gagnon note on page 81 of the House of Commons Procedure and Practice, the House can claim that the right to punish as a contempt any action which, though not a breach of specific privileges, tends to obstruct or impede the House in the performance of its function, obstructs or impedes any member or officer of the House in the discharge of their duties, or is an offense against the authority and dignity of the House. It is worth noting that the standard for such a breach is quite high. In order for a matter of contempt to be ruled as a prima facie case, the member must demonstrate that the issue has been raised at the earliest opportunity, while also providing sufficient evidence to support the claim that a contempt of the House has occurred. On the condition of timeliness, the member indicated in his submission that December 2nd, 2024 was his first opportunity to raise this matter in the House. Given that the breach of the rule as described by the member occurred after November 29, 2024, I would agree that this was indeed his first earliest opportunity to raise this matter. Regarding the question of evidence, while the member raised several complaints on this matter, his core allegation was that the Premier failed to respond to the member's question taken under advisement within 45 days. He argued that this failure breached our rules regarding matters taken under advisement in the Committee of Supply, the member further contended that by refusing to answer questions after claiming the Premier would provide that information, it prevents an MLA from doing their job and holding the government to account. For reference, our sub-rule 77(16) reads as follows. During the consideration of departmental estimates and the debate on the concurrence motion in the Committee of Supply, when a minister takes a question under advisement, they must, within 45 days of the question being asked, respond to the question. The member is partially correct in his allegation here. As he established in his submission, the 45 days in question here expired 2 days before he raised this matter. However, the member also noted in his submission that this same rule is silent as to a remedy as to what occurs when a minister has breached that order. This second point is relevant to my consideration of this situation. The Standing Committee on Rules of the House adopted provisions of Sub-Rule 77(16) on June 26, 2015, and the House subsequently ratified that decision. During the consideration of that rule, the committee chose not to include any consequence for failing to meet the 45-day deadline. Accordingly, as the rule imposes a requirement without a consequence, the Speaker is not provided with a mechanism to respond to a breach. I would also note that while the rule provides a range of options for ministers to provide information to a member, it does not require the clerk's office to track the provision for answers to members. Accordingly, the clerks and the Speaker will not always know if a minister has met the time limit required by the rule. It is important to note here that the basis of the member's complaint is a breach of a rule of this House. I reference this because members should know that any matter concerning the methods by which the House proceeds in the conduct of business would be a question of order, not privilege or contempt. Joseph Mango, in the second edition of the Parliamentary Privilege in Canada, states on page 14 that allegations of breach of privilege by a member in the House that amount to complaints about procedures and practices in the House are by their very nature matters of order. He also states on page 223 of the same edition that a breach of the standing orders or a failure to follow an established practice would invoke a point of order rather than a question of privilege. With all of this in mind, I could see how not responding to this matter under advisement in a timely manner could be considered discourteous or disrespectful to the member. However, I would not agree that the Premier was in contempt of the House. Accordingly, after careful consideration, I rule that the member for Fort Garry did not prove a prima facie case of contempt in this matter. Before I conclude, I will note as well, for the record, that the information the member for Fort Garry had requested related to the Premier's attendance at a respectful workplace training seminar. In her response to the member's matter of contempt submission, the Honourable Government House Leader shared with the House that the Premier attending a respectful workplace training seminar on February 29, 2024. I do not understand why it took 47 days for that information to be shared with the member and with the House, and I would respectfully request all ministers be more attentive to such obligations in the future. I would also note that in my time as a member of this House, I have observed that ministers from both parties have sometimes failed to meet the standard set by this rule for providing opposition members with information in a timely way. While I do not believe that this would be a contempt of the House, I do believe that it is disrespectful. In my opinion, anyone who has earned the privilege of being appointed a Minister of the Crown should aspire to fulfill the obligations of that role to the best of their abilities, including responding in a timely manner to requests for information from other members of this House. I thank all members for their attention to this ruling. I have a further ruling for the House. During private members' business on December 5, 2024, the member for Waverley rose on a point of order alleging that while speaking in debate, the leader of the official opposition used inappropriate language and called into question the impartiality of the chair. The official opposition House leader also spoke to the matter before the deputy speaker took it under advisement so that the Hansard transcript could be reviewed. I have reviewed the Hansard transcript for that morning. It is clear to me that certain comments made by the leader of the official opposition were unfortunate and caused some disorder that had to be addressed by the deputy speaker on several occasions. However, I do not believe that his comments called into question the impartiality of the chair, nor were they unparliamentary. I would therefore rule that the member for Waverley did not have a point of order. Having said that, I respectfully request that in the future, all members carefully consider their comments before they speak in the House to ensure what they say cannot be taken as a reflection on the chair, on the role of the chair, on the rulings of the chair, or on the performance of individuals in the chair. Thank you. We will now go to orders of the day. Petitions, I'm sorry. How could I forget that? Seeing no petitions, we will now move to a matter of urgent public importance. Pardon me. The Leader of the Official Opposition on a matter of urgent public importance.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I move, seconded by the MLA for Midland, that in accordance with Sub-Rule 39(1), the regular business of the House be set aside to discuss a matter of urgent public importance, specifically the need to protect Manitoba businesses and consumers from the economic impact of American tariffs and to develop a long-term interprovincial trade strategy. Hear, hear.
Before recognizing any other honourable members, I should remind all honourable members that under Rule 39(2), the mover of a motion on a matter of urgent public importance and one member from the other organized parties in the House are allowed no more than 10 minutes to explain the urgency of debating the matter immediately. As stated in Beauchene Citation 390, urgency in this context means the urgent and immediate debate, not of the subject matter of the motion. In their remarks, members should focus exclusively on whether or not there is urgency of debate and whether or not the ordinary opportunities for debate will enable the House to consider the matter early enough to ensure that the public interest will not suffer. So it has been moved by the Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition, seconded by the Honourable Member for Midland, that in accordance with Sub-Rule 39(1), the regular business of the House be set aside to discuss a matter of urgent public importance, specifically the need to protect Manitoba businesses and consumers for the economic impact of American tariffs and to develop a long-term interprovincial strategy. The Honourable Leader of the Official, the Honourable Government House Leader.
Miigwech, Honourable Speaker. On a point of order, I'd like to ask for leave to canvass the House to see if there's leave to debate the government resolution on today's notice paper titled, and I quote, "Manitoba is stronger standing together against Donald Trump's tariff tax and threats."
So just for clarification purposes, the Leader of the Official Opposition will get his 10 minutes to speak to the MUPI when we are finished dealing with this leave request. So is there leave to debate the government resolution on today's notice paper titled "Manitoba is Stronger Standing Together Against Donald Trump's Tariff and Tax and Threats"? Is there leave? Leave has been denied. Now the Leader of the Official Opposition on his MUPI.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. It gives me great pleasure to stand up and speak to this topic that is absolutely a matter of urgent public importance. And it's interesting, Honourable Speaker, that when we get into these wonderful chambers, and it's unfortunate, though, that we have to talk about this topic today. So today we want to talk about an issue that impacts economies around the world, tariffs. Specifically, Honourable Speaker, the tariffs that have recently been brought in by President Trump and the United States to Canada. An issue that, while it has been threatened by the USA for months, came into reality approximately 24 hours ago, when a 25% tariff on virtually all Canadian goods and a 10% tariff on Canadian energy was imposed. In retaliation, Honourable Speaker, I know that the members opposite are going to have an opportunity to speak. It's unfortunate that their House Leader did not do their homework and get their stuff done ahead of time again, but they will have an opportunity to put words on the record, Honourable Speaker.
So let's debate it.
In retaliation, the Government of Canada advised it will slap a 25% tariffs on $30 billion worth of American goods coming into Canada effective immediately. While tariffs, which are taxes on imports, may seem like an easy solution to protecting domestic industries or generating government revenue, they are, in fact, a poor economic policy with wide-reaching negative consequences. First and foremost, tariffs distort market forces. The essence of a competitive market is that goods and services are exchanged based on supply, demand, and price. When governments impose tariffs, specifically the ones put onto Canada by President Trump. They artificially raise the cost of imported goods, making them more expensive for consumers. Unlike the Premier of Manitoba standing in his spot with his colleagues all side by side and mocking the president instead of actually taking initiatives on making plans, creating plans that they should have been doing for months. They sit there and they mock the President of the United States and in turn mock our Prime Minister of Canada today. When governments impose tariffs, they're artificially rising that cost. This disrupts the natural flow of trade and forces people to pay more for items that could be produced more efficiently abroad. As a result, consumers face higher prices. Tariffs might protect certain industries in the short term, but they do so at the expense of the consumer and the entrepreneur. Everyday products, from electronics to food, become more costly. This is not only an inconvenience for consumers, but also a direct hit to the standard of living, Honourable Speaker. When prices rise, people's purchasing power decreases, leading to a reduction in overall consumption and economic growth. We know from history that societies that embrace tariff-free trade around the globe become wealthier over time. They have more stable economies and gain access to goods that their own countries may not possess or produce in greater quantities. Trade ensures growing businesses, economic growth, jobs, and access to new and better products. It lifts up all the individuals in society. Tariffs also harm industries that rely on global supply chains. Much like Gardeau, the great city of Selkirk, which I'm glad that the minister across the way is learning the name of that company today. In today's interconnected world, Honourable Speaker, many industries depend on importing raw materials, parts, or components to assemble finished products. Honourable Speaker, it's unfortunate that there's name-calling coming from the government benches, Honourable Speaker, but I'm sure you have that under control. This not only hurts their competitiveness, but can also lead to job losses as companies are forced to cut costs to relocate production abroad. Other nations affected by tariffs typically respond with their own tariffs, creating a cycle of escalating trade barriers, which we are seeing, Honourable Speaker. This tit-for-tat approach leads to a reduction in international trade, making it harder for all countries to access goods and services at competitive prices. In the long term, this can lead to trade wars, which disrupt global markets and harm economic stability. We're seeing this already, Honourable Speaker. Furthermore, tariffs disproportionately harm the poorest segments of the society. These individuals spend a higher percentage of their income on goods and services that are subject to tariffs. By increasing prices on essential items, tariffs create a greater financial burden for those who can least afford it, exacerbating inequality and social unrest. Historically, the negative effects of tariffs have been well documented. The Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act of 1930 is a prime example.
I know all about that.
It raised tariffs on thousands of goods, leading to a dramatic decline in international trade and worsening the Great Depression. While protectionist measures may seem like a quick fix during times of economic difficulty, the long-term consequences are detrimental, not just to one country, but to the global economy as a whole. So what's the alternative to tariffs? Free trade based on a fair competition and mutual cooperation offers the best path forward, Honourable Speaker. It encourages innovation, lowers prices, and creates more opportunities for consumers and businesses alike. Trade agreements that reduce barriers and promote cooperation among nations lead to economic growth and better standards of living of people around the world. Tariffs on Canada can have several negative effects, both for Canada and the country imposing the tariffs. Here are some of the reasons why they generally are seen as harmful. Higher prices for consumers, economic strain on businesses, retaliation and trade wars, negative impact on supply chains, harm to the global economy, and it disrupts NAFTA and UNSCA. Overall, tariffs on Canada, put forward by President Trump in the USA to not only Canada and many countries around the world, are going to have major economic challenges and harm to not only the consumers, but to each and every person who buys, purchases, and runs businesses in each and every country. Honourable Speaker, in conclusion, the reason why we need to move forward on this debate this afternoon is, first of all, it's urgent. This is the first available time to be able to do this. Secondly, we asked questions in question period today, Honourable Speaker. We're getting no answers from this government, so I think it's going to be quality time this afternoon for members of the government side also to participate in this debate/discussion about what are they really planning on doing to protect our economy here in Manitoba. We took it upon ourselves to forgo our petitions, that there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, thousands of Manitobans that are waiting and watching at home, Honourable Speaker, to see if their petition gets read today. But this topic is so important that that's why we forgo those. We want to, again, put that olive branch out to the government and once again ask for them to consider the bipartisan committee on finding solutions right here in Manitoba that will strengthen our economy, protect our business, protect those great jobs, protect those industries that continue to make Manitoba what's great in Manitoba, and also taking a look at what else can we do cross-jurisdictionally in this great province of ours to bring down some of those barriers to that free trade across provincial lines. And also, we on this side of the House, Honourable Speaker, and Manitobans, not only watching today but through the media, have been waiting now for just over a month for the Premier to bring forward his plan that he promised on February 1st. He said he had a plan. He said he had plans that he was developing prior to the presidential election in the United States of America. We just want to see it. He's going to have the opportunity today to bring forward and showcase it to Manitobans. Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Let's get on with the debate.
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Honourable Speaker, just before I get to Honourable Speaker, just before I respond to the Muppy on a point of order.
The Honourable Government House Leader on a point of order.
Miigwech, could you please canvass the House to see if there is leave to debate the government resolution on today's notice paper titled Manitoba is Stronger, Standing Together Against Donald Trump's Tariff Tax and Threats during orders of the day.
Is there leave to debate the government resolution on today's notice paper titled Manitoba is Stronger, Standing Together Against Donald Trump's Tariff, Tax and Threats? During orders of the day today, is there leave? Leave has been granted. The Honourable Opposition House Leader.
Can you please canvass the House to see if there's will to not recognize the clock and ensure that every member speaks and has spoken to it who wishes to speak, and have the question put on the resolution.
Is there leave to not see the clock, and I'm going to paraphrase here, is there leave to not see the clock until every member who wishes to speak on the resolution has had the opportunity? Is there leave? Leave is leave has been denied. The Honourable Government House Leader. The Honourable Government House Leader on the Muppy.
Miigwech, Honourable Speaker, I'm pleased to get up in the House today to put a couple of words on the record in respect of the members opposite's Muppy. Let me just start by saying I've actually never been more proud of our Premier and our team who has, since we learned of the possible tariffs, of the response from the leadership of the NDP government, and again, under our Premier. I have to put that out there. Our Premier has been working so extraordinarily hard, standing up for Manitobans and standing up for Canadians under what is an existential threat from President Donald Trump. We've actually never seen this in our lifetime, the threat that Canada is under, the threat that Manitoba is under, the threat that our businesses, the threat that our agriculture, the threat that our families are under right now under the current administration in the U.S. We've been working incredibly hard responding to that threat, again, from the very, very beginning. You know who hasn't? Members opposite. That's right. Members opposite have, buried their heads in the sand in respect of responding to this very, very real threat. I haven't seen them anywhere. I haven't seen them at any rallies. I haven't seen them, waving the Canadian flag. I haven't seen them outside yesterday. Nobody knows where members opposite have been in the last several months since President Donald Trump started threatening Canada's very existence. None of us know where they are. Manitobans don't know where they are because they've been virtually silent on this threat and this issue. Not only, for the most part, they've all been silent, but we've seen that, those individuals, those men that are right now vying for the leadership of the PC caucus endorse Donald Trump. We have Wally, I don't know what his last name is, but we've got Wally, who's trying to be the leader of the PC caucus, who in his great wisdom thought that it was funny to talk about, in an attempt to address the homelessness, unsheltered issue that we have.
I would remind the member to keep her comments strictly relevant to the MUPI. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Miigwech, Honourable Speaker, and I will keep my comments to the MUPI. It's important to understand that while members opposite have brought forward this MUPI today, the men that are vying to become the leaders of the Manitoba PC government are in support of Donald Trump. It is incredibly important that Manitobans understand that the two individuals that are vying to become the PC leader have openly and proudly endorsed Donald Trump. And the other one over here, the member for Fort White, again, who's coming in polling second now, has thanked the U.S. government, thanked the president for this threat against our province and our country. So it's a sad state of affairs when members opposite, get up in the House to bring forward a MUPI and try to feign concern in respect of this threat. But they have these two individuals who openly support Donald Trump. They actually have quite a few members within their PC party that openly and gladly and proudly support Donald Trump. I'll remind the House that their campaign manager, or whatever she was, Candice Bergen, proudly posted a picture wearing a MAGA hat. A MAGA hat, which I'll remind members in the House, is the equivalent of a modern-day KKK hat. And that's what members opposite have within their midst. So they get up in the House and they're feigning concern about this, but they have members in their party. Just today, Honourable Speaker, the member for Borderland, who has courted anti-vaxxers, who has courted folks that the truck convoys, and I think wanted to give them tea biscuits and tea and coffee and all of that stuff while they were out there with their grotesque protests. Today, he's encouraging Manitobans to cross the border or to open up our border and welcome the U.S. into our province to take us over as a 51st state. Again, as our Premier has said, and as every single member opposite here has said publicly on our social media, in the House, in the media, Canada will never become the 51st state ever. And our NDP government, our caucus, will always stand up for Manitobans. We will always stand up for our Canadian family under the threat that we are now posed with under President Donald Trump. So, again, our Premier has been working incredibly hard. I mean, it's no wonder that our Premier is the #1 most popular Premier across Manitoba, because he puts the work in. He puts the work in to represent Manitoba in a good way, to represent our government and our team in a good way, and to represent Canada in a good way, not only here in the province, not only when he's in Ottawa, but when he's across the border meeting with the current administration. So we're very proud of the work that our government is doing. I would question again the validity of the MUPI that's being brought forward by the members when none of us have seen them. There's been not a peep from members opposite in the last couple of months. And the only peeps that we've gotten is from those members thanking, supporting, and proudly supporting President Donald Trump and his threat against our province, against our country, against our morals, against our values, against what we stand for as Manitobans and Canadians. I never heard one peep from any single member opposite when President Trump got up and made an executive order that there's only 2 genders. The damage and the harm and the dangerous rhetoric I've not seen once come from them.
Order, please. The member for Fort White.
Honourable Speaker, I rise on a matter of privilege.
The honourable member for Fort White on a matter of privilege.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. I rise on a matter of privilege, as I know a matter of privilege is a very serious matter, so I do not take this lightly. The Premier, the Minister of Business, Mining, Trade and Job Creation, and now the Government House Leader, along with many others of this Premier's cabinet colleagues, have gone out of their way today to intentionally and maliciously misquote me in this House in a clear attempt to disparage me and our party. The Premier and the Government House Leader, along with the Minister of Business, Mining, Trade and Job Creation, misquoted from an interview I had back in February. The Premier chose to cherry pick and omit lines from the quote. He, along with his team, took great liberties to mislead this House and Manitobans. Wow. Here is the full quote to set the record straight, Honourable Speaker. One of his, Trump, clear wins was a change in federal government he wanted. Justin Trudeau is gone now. Thank God he's gone. So how much influence did the 25% tariff threat have on that? I would say a lot. Period. I was like, thank you. Thank you, he's gone now. Thank you, he's gone now. So now we just need to get rid of WAB and unleash Manitoba. End quote. Honourable Speaker, And Manitobans at home, you can go back and watch the podcast. You can clearly see that this premier, this
Order,
government
please.
House leader is
Order, please. Order, please. I would remind members when speaking in the House, it is against our rules to use a member's name. They can use their title as minister, they can use their title as premier, they can use their constituency, but they cannot use their name. The honourable member for Fort White.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. I apologize for that. I was under the impression that if I was reading the name within a quote, it was allowed, but I do apologize. To be clear, Honourable Speaker, you can see, you can hear, you can watch the video, clear as day, that I am thanking that Justin Trudeau is gone. I am thanking that now we need to move forward and remove this premier so we can unleash Manitoba. The premier, the government House leader have maliciously and purposely gone out of their way to mislead Manitobans and misrepresent my quote. You can clearly see this from the quote, a false narrative of what was actually said. It is sad and disgusting that across the way now, members of the NDP are trying to heckle and shout me down when I'm simply standing up and reading my own quote. The blatant misrepresentation of facts, the quotes, directly impedes my ability to do my duties in this legislature. I'll repeat that again, Honourable Speaker, because that's why I rise on a matter of privilege. The blatant misrepresentation of facts, misrepresentation of the quote from this premier, from this government House leader, and members of the NDP directly impede my ability to do my duties in this legislature. I stand by the words in that podcast, and that fact is that the tariffs are bad. The tariffs are starting an economic war between our countries. I do not support them in any way. Insinuating otherwise is a clear fabrication by this premier, government House leader, and the entire NDP caucus. There are two things that were very clear from my interview. If the premier or anyone on that side decided to watch the interview, is that one, I stand against the Trump tariffs, and tariffs will hurt everyone. And number two, Justin Trudeau needs to be gone sooner than later. I hope both of those things will be gone by tomorrow. For that, I will say thank you. There is a precedent, Honourable Speaker, that intentional efforts to attack the reputation of a member in this House is a violation of a privilege and directly impedes my ability to do my duties in this legislature. The Premier and members of the NDP purposely misled Manitobans with that quote. They picked and chose what they wanted so that they could get their sound bites for Manitobans. Well, the truth has come home, and the truth is now all Manitobans can see the lies and the misrepresentation of this NDP. Smoke and mirrors and false statements. I move.
Order, please. I would caution the member very strongly about suggesting that a member in this chamber is lying. So the member should be very careful with his language. The honourable member for Fort White.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I move, seconded by the member from Portage La Prairie, that the Premier, Government House Leader, and the Minister of Business, Mining, Trade, and Job Creation withdraw their remarks and apologize immediately.
Here, here, here.
Before recognizing any other members to speak to the matter of privilege, I would ask anyone speaking to keep their comments relevant to the matter of privilege. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Miigwech, Honourable Speaker, we won't be apologizing anytime soon, just to be clear with the member. Honourable Speaker, I have the quote in question here. And now the member for Fort White is using revisionist history, as he tends to do. The quote is, Trump wants a win. And I think one of his clear wins, and a lot of Canadians' wins, was a change in federal government. He wanted JT gone, and thank God he's gone. So how much influence did 25% tariff threat have on that? I would say a lot. And I would say thank you. I would say thank you, he's gone now. So let's be clear, Honourable Speaker. Let's be clear. The member for Fort White.
Order! Order! The member of the Government House Leader has the floor, and I would ask all members to try and control themselves. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Members opposite are clapping and so excited that the member for Fort White, again, the second runner for the PC leadership, they're excited that Donald Trump, a foreign entity, influenced Canadian politics. That's what you all are clapping for. Yeah. You're excited that Donald Trump influenced Canadian politics to fit their narrative, and that's what they're clapping for. Clearly, the quote illustrates that members opposite, the member for Fort White, again, second in the leadership race to become the new PC leader, is thanking Donald Trump for interfering in Canadian politics and pushing out a sitting prime minister. If Manitobans and Canadians are not concerned with that, they should be. Right. Members opposite are welcoming and thanking so heartedly that a president from across the border is influencing Canadian politics. And why is President Donald Trump influencing Canadian politics? Because he wants to take Canada over. He wants to annex Canada for our resources and our minerals. And that's what members opposite are so excited for. That's what they're doubling down on right now, today. They're doubling down on this threat to Manitoba and to Canada. So we will not be apologizing. Our Premier, myself, anybody else on this side of the House will never apologize, certainly to the member for Fort White, and we will never apologize to that whole caucus for standing up for Manitoba and for standing up for Canada. Canada will never become part of the U.S. Yeah!
I thank members for their comments on the matter of privilege that has been raised by the honourable member for Fort White. I would like to inform the House that Joseph Mango advises on page 254 of the second edition of Parliamentary Privilege in Canada that language that impugns the integrity of members would be unparliamentary and a breach of order, contrary to the standing orders, but not a breach of privilege. Therefore, the honourable member does not have a prima facie matter of privilege. The Honourable Government House Leader to conclude her remarks on the matter of urgent public importance.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. As I was saying before, we were interrupted by the member for Fort White because he doesn't even understand his own quote, and I think his feelings are hurt. I would say this, once again, our government is working so incredibly hard on behalf of Manitobans, and our government is working so incredibly hard on behalf of all Canadians. What members opposite don't realize is that for 7.5 years, Manitoba had no hope. Manitobans were scared. They didn't feel listened to. They were thrown away callously by both Brian Pallister and Heather Stephenson and every single one of those members opposite. Manitoba is a beacon right now. We're a beacon of hope. We're a beacon of compassion. We're a beacon of showing that leadership is capable and that we work hard and that we honor and stand up for Manitoba families and for all of Canadian families. We are a beacon across this country, and I'm so proud to be a part of this government that will stand up for Manitoba and stand up for Canada 24/7, 365 days a year. Miigwech.
I thank members for their advice to the chair on a motion proposed by the honourable member for Tyndall Park.
Honourable Speaker, I would also like to respond to the MUPI.
Is the honourable member requesting leave? Does the honourable member have leave to respond to the matter of urgent public importance? Agreed. Leave has been denied. Order, please. So I thank members for their advice to the chair on the motion proposed by the honourable leader of the official opposition requesting debate on a matter of urgent public importance. The 90-minute notice required prior to the start of routine proceedings by sub-rule 39(1) was provided, and I thank the member for that. Under our rules and practices, the subject matter requiring urgent consideration must be so pressing that the public interest will suffer if the matter is not given immediate attention. Crucially, there must also be no other reasonable opportunities to raise the matter. I have listened very carefully to the arguments put forward. Clearly, the matter of protecting Manitoba businesses and consumers from economic impact of American tariffs and developing long-term interprovincial trade strategy is relevant to this House. However, as I noted a moment ago, my duty in this moment is also to determine if there are other opportunities for debate on such matters. With that in mind, I must now note that members have several opportunities to raise this matter. They could raise it as a member statement. They could ask questions on this topic during oral questions. They could use their grievances to speak to this matter. They could also speak to the government resolution on a very similar topic, which is currently on the notice paper. Accordingly, I rule this motion out of order as a matter of urgent public importance. The Honourable Government House Leader. Grievances. Orders of the day, the Honourable Government House Leader.
What you can do is you can ask. Now we're in orders of the day.
The Honourable Government House Leader. On House business?
On House business.
The Honourable Government Leader on House business.
Could you please call for debate on a motion to appoint a deputy chairperson, followed by debate on the government resolution?
We will now call for debate on a motion to appoint a deputy chairperson, and then that will be followed by debate on the government resolution titled Manitoba is Stronger Against Donald Trump's Tax, Tariffs and Threats. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Which I move, seconded by the Minister for Education. Am I allowed to say? Member for the Electoral Division for Boroughs be Deputy Chairperson of the Committees of the Whole House.
It has been moved by the Government House Leader, seconded by the Honourable Minister of Education and Early Childhood Learning, that Diljit Brar, member for the electoral division for boroughs, be Deputy Chairperson of the Committees of the Whole House. Are there any speakers to the motion? Hearing none? Nope. Are there any speakers to the motion? Seeing none, is it the pleasure of the House to adopt the motion? I heard a no. All those in favor of adopting the motion, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. I believe the ayes have it. Therefore, the motion is accordingly passed. We will now debate the resolution brought forward by the Government House Leader. The Government House Leader.
I move, seconded by the Minister for Education. Therefore, be it the whole thing. Whereas the tariffs by U.S. President Donald Trump threaten Canada's sovereignty and economic security, and whereas Manitoba is a powerhouse of clean hydroelectricity, critical minerals, and brilliant, hardworking people who drive innovation and prosperity, and whereas Manitobans look out for each other as it is the Manitoba way, and whereas now more than ever, the people of this province need to stick together, stand up for each other, and take decisive action to fight for Manitoba jobs, industries, and resources, and whereas Manitobans are stronger standing together, and whereas Manitobans love Canada, and whereas Canada will never become the 51st state, therefore be it resolved that the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba stands united in defense of the province, its workers, and its industries against President Donald Trump's tariff tax and threats, which threaten Canada's sovereignty and economic security.
It has been moved by the Honourable Government House Leader, seconded by the Honourable Minister of Education and Early Childhood Learning, that Manitoba, whereas the tariffs by U.S. President Donald Trump, dispense. The floor is open for debate. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Miigwech, Honourable Speaker. Miigwech, Honourable Speaker. I am pleased to get up in the House today at this critical moment in our history to talk about what is a real threat against Manitoba and against Canada. I just want to reiterate again the fact that in the last many months, we haven't seen anything from members opposite to stand up for Manitoba or to stand up for Canada. Similarly, we didn't see anything from their federal counterparts as this threat was looming. I think that their federal leader, Pierre Poilievre, quite enjoyed the fact that Donald Trump and Elon Musk were tweeting about him and saying what a good leader he would be for Canada, which of course we know is entirely not true. But I think that he really enjoyed the fact that he was getting that endorsement from President Donald Trump and unelected Vice President Elon Musk. And we didn't hear anything from him as well. We didn't hear anything from Pierre Poilievre. We didn't hear anything from members opposite as this threat was looming and was being held over our heads. Not a peep from any of them. Did any of the members opposite decide to organize a rally in support of Manitoba and in support of Canada? No. In fact, what they did, similar to what Pierre Poilievre did, they're MIA. Nobody could find Pierre Poilievre for weeks and weeks while Donald Trump was threatening to annex our beautiful sovereign country. He was kind of just like MIA. He would prefer to have gotten the endorsement of Donald Trump and again, the unelected Vice President Elon Musk, rather than defend and stand for Canada and stand for Canadian families, stand for the Canadian auto industry, stand for Canadian agriculture, stand for Canadian industries. He would have rather have two individuals across the border talk good stuff about him. And why? Because he's hoping, similar to what the member for Fort White brought up, that they celebrate when a president from another country tries to influence the politics in our own country. Pierre Poilievre welcomes that, and he thought that that was going to go over well with Canadians. He thought that President Trump and unelected Vice President Elon Musk was going to help get him elected as Prime Minister of Canada. What he didn't anticipate is that Canadians will not stand for bullying. We won't stand while a president can you even call Elon Musk a billionaire? Like, he's got so much money. They will not stand for bullies who are trying to influence the politics in our country, the direction that our country takes. Canadians just won't stand for it. And he thought that it would, but Canadians and Manitobans and everybody across our beautiful territories have stood together against a bully, have stood together against this incredible threat to our sovereignty. So I think it's important for Manitobans to know that the Manitoba PCs, the Manitoba PC caucus, the Manitoba PC party, they stand with Donald Trump and Elon Musk and J.D. Vance and all of those folks. Again, I was talking earlier about that members opposite were completely silent when President Donald Trump got up in his executive, in his first, mere hours, and signed an executive order that stated there are only two genders, male and female. We know that that's not true. It's just so archaic and so a dinosaur to have men determine the gender identities of millions and millions and millions of people in the U.S. I guess I don't know if President Donald Trump understood what he was doing when he did that, because at conception, fetuses are all female. So essentially what he did was he made all U.S. citizens female. So I guess that's maybe okay with him. But again, we didn't hear one word from members opposite about standing up against that, standing up for Manitobans who are under threat because of that executive order and the way that that executive order is pushing the U.S. to put citizens in harm's way, in very real harm's way. And we've seen the consequences of that. What we saw was Pierre Poilievre get up in I believe it was a CTV news interview. Correct me if I'm wrong, it could have been CBC, but I think it was CTV or Global. And he was asked, a reporter asked Pierre Poilievre, what did he think about President Donald Trump, making a decree that there are only two genders. And Pierre Poilievre's response to that was, well, I don't know any other genders than male or female. Do you? Shame. So flippant. so incredibly flippant and so incredibly dangerous to Canadians. I, like my amazing colleagues on this side, take offense to that. Take offense that a man who is vying to become the Prime Minister of our country, a man who, with enormous privilege, a man who is trying to be the Prime Minister, which that role is meant to be the Prime Minister for all Canadians. You can't exclude who you're going to be the Prime Minister for. You don't pick and choose who you're going to be the Prime Minister for. That's right. And that's what he was doing. He essentially did that mere hours after President Trump signed that executive order assigning only 2 genders. That is shameful. And that is a sad commentary on what the PCs, both federally and of course here in Manitoba. And for Manitobans that think, well, that's just Pierre Poilievre, that's not Manitoba, I would remind the public and I would remind the House that they had 4 individuals who stood up and voted against Two-Spirit and trans rights, stood up and voted against Two-Spirit and trans Manitobans. Shame. And what was the bill? What was the bill that those 4 men had no qualms about getting up in the House, with their vote, voting against the rights? It was basically a bill to affirm the humanity of Two-Spirited and trans Manitobans. It was to affirm the existence and the humanity of Two-Spirited and trans Manitobans. And those 4 men got up in this House and voted against that. That's shameful. We know that the member for Borderland, again, I would encourage the member for Borderland, just move to the US already. The member for Borderland's right there. And I would really encourage him, like if he loves the US so much and he's willing to sell out Manitobans and sell out our province and sell out our country, just move to the US already. Yeah. And, he's got this propensity for courting, folks that I would say are not necessarily standing up for an inclusive and equitable and democratic Canada. He stands up for individuals that are, wanting to see influence of a foreign government into our own government. And that's a pretty sad state of affairs. So I would be remiss if I didn't take a bit of time to talk about, the fact that members opposite, again, get up in the House in question period and they try to ask some questions about what our government or our premier is doing on this threat of these 25% tariff tax from the US. Again, they've been MIA, they've been silent, they've had their head in the sand for like months. God knows where any of them have been. They've never been there for Manitobans. They've never stood up for Manitobans. We were thinking that we weren't going to hear them actually even utter the word Donald Trump, similar to how they can't even say the word abortion in this House. The PCs are right now in the midst of their PC leadership campaign. They didn't vet out Wally. What's Wally's last name? Doddridge? Okay, what Doddridge. They didn't vote out a man who has doubled down on his attacks against trans Manitobans. Good old Wally is doubling down on, xenophobic comments that he's made. Good old Wally is doubling down on a really grotesque narrative of sending polar bears to deal with homeless and unsheltered Manitobans, which, by the way, we know predominantly are Indigenous unsheltered Manitobans. So you have this non-Indigenous man, Wally, who is making jokes about sending polar bears to deal with the homelessness issue.
Order, please. I would remind members speaking to this resolution to keep their comments relevant to the resolution. The Honourable Government House Leader.
I appreciate, Honourable Speaker, that reminder. And I would submit to Honourable Speaker and to this House that the comments are relevant in the sense that this is the leadership. When we are in this critical moment in our history in Manitoba and Canada, this is the so-called leadership of the Manitoba PCs. They've been absent, they've been MIA, nobody knows what they stand for. Well, that's not true. We know what they stand for. But in respect of the tariffs and Donald Trump and that threat of trying to annex Canada, we don't know what they stand for, because they don't really care to stand for Manitobans or Canadians, because if they did, they would have never stood up in this House and voted against Two-Spirit and trans Manitobans. If they really cared about Manitobans and Canadians, they never would have constructed their whole 2023 provincial campaign on the backs of trans kids. And, you know, the member for Fort White was the face of that. And while the member for Fort White stands up in the House every time his feelings are hurt and does a matter of privilege, not once has he apologized to parents, to trans children, to the trans community. Not once has he stood up and apologized. In fact, he's still doubling down on this ridiculous parental rights narrative and discourse. So it is relevant, because these are the men, Wally and the member for Fort White, are the men that want to lead this member's opposite in respect of their response, or their somewhat response to Donald Trump. Again, Wally, with his full chest, supported and endorsed Donald Trump. So we have a man in Manitoba that is vying to be the PC leader who wholeheartedly supports Donald Trump. That's scary. Manitobans should be scared, and they should be concerned. And again, the second runner-up in this PC leadership race is the member for Fort White. And the member for Fort White was the face of an anti-trans campaign on the backs of trans children. That's the two choices that members opposite in all of Manitoba, that was the two choices that the members opposite could come up with.
Order, please. I'm going to read the resolution just to remind the minister to keep her comments relevant to it, and I would ask members to remain silent when the speaker is standing and speaking. Therefore, be it resolved that the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba stands united in defense of the province, its workers, and its industries against President Donald Trump's tariff tax and threats which threaten Canada's sovereignty and economic security. So let's keep our comments relevant to that. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Miigwech, Honourable Speaker. I think I've laid the case for Manitobans and for Canadians who at some point will see this speech, that the PCs, be it either Manitoba PCs, or the progressive conservatives out of Ottawa, are not the leaders that we need as Canadians or Manitobans during this time of serious threat. You know who You know who is a leader for Manitoba? You know who is standing up on the national stage and on the international stage. That is our Premier. Our Premier is working so incredibly hard, representing Manitoba in such a good way, representing Canada alongside other premiers in such a good way, and in such a good way when he crosses the border into the US. And I think that it's really important to understand that our government understands and knows that we are better together when we are together on fighting a bully. We do good work, and we could sustain that threat that is coming against us. We know that Manitoba has a diverse economy, and we know that we support thousands of jobs in agriculture and industries. And we know that when the tariffs were announced, many businesses across Manitoba expressed serious concerns about their future. We know that Manitoba ships about $200 million of aluminum to the US every year, and we know that that industry supports hundreds of Manitoba jobs, and those are under threat by these tariffs that have been instituted by President Donald Trump. We know that Manitoba sends more than $4.5 billion of our agriculture and food exports to the US. We did that in 2023, about $4.5 billion. And which was almost half of our agriculture and food exports. We know that local breweries are also feeling the squeeze and the impact of tariffs. I was really proud to stand with our Premier and our whole team when we launched our Support Local campaign, really encouraging Manitobans to support local and to shop local. And I have to say, our team talks so much about how impressed we are with Manitobans. Manitobans have stood up in such a tangible way to shop local and to support Manitoba businesses, to support Manitoba agriculture, and to support Manitoba industries. It's quite something to see the way that Manitobans have pulled together, and really across the country to see consumers supporting Canada and their provinces with their hard-earned money. And we were really proud to be able to launch this Shop Local, Support Local initiative. And we know that folks are doing that, and they're taking it up on their own initiative to make sure that they're supporting local businesses and really taking the time when they go shopping for their groceries to check the labels, to see where the food is coming from, and that's extraordinary. So I really want to lift up, and I think on behalf of our government, we really want to thank Manitobans for doing that, that really important work. And while it may not seem like it's a lot in the midst of everything that's going on right now, it's huge. It's huge to see Manitobans coming together and to support our local businesses, our local small businesses, and our industries. We know that Manitobans, as a result of these 25% tariff tax by President Donald Trump, they're going to start to feel the effects very soon. And I know that I was listening to CBC this morning, and they were saying that, as soon as 2 weeks, as soon as supplies are exhausted, we're going to start to feel the pinch of these tariff tax. I know that there's been commentary across the country that, the auto industry could be affected within like 10 days. And I know that there's been some movement today in respect of the auto industry, a little reprieve. It should be noted that even though there's a little bit of a reprieve for the auto industry, that's not a win, right? It's not a win that President Donald Trump has given us a little bit of a reprieve for the auto industry. a win is no tariff tax at all. A win is no tariffs whatsoever. So I know that the auto industry is probably relieved that they've got a little bit of a reprieve, but that's not a win. That's not a win. And again, we know that Donald Trump is trying to institute these 25% tariff tax because he is attempting to cripple our economy and make it easier to annex Canada. So more importantly, when those tariff taxes were announced, I need Manitobans to know that our Premier and our Cabinet and our whole team responded immediately. Again, God knows where the PCs were, Lord knows where they were, even if they were even reading the news, but they were nowhere to be found. But our team was working incredibly hard. And one of the first things that we announced was that we were going to pull American liquor off the shelves of all of our Manitoba liquor stores. And that would cause, and while members opposite don't care, that would have caused about $80 million in annual liquor sales to the U.S. So that's significant. And for, you know, our little province of Manitoba, $80 million, a consequence of $80 million is a lot. And that was one of the first things that we announced. And obviously, we just instituted that within the last days. And again, I didn't hear peep from members opposite about what they would do under the same circumstances. And let me just say this. I think it's important to know that in many respects, the crisis that our government is faced with right now, of which we are showing up in real ways, of which our Premier is working so incredibly hard and is a star really on the national stage. This is kind of like our COVID. And, you know, members opposite, I'll remind the public and I'll remind the House, failed miserably during COVID. Failed miserably. They couldn't even handle getting unexpired PPE. They were handing out expired PPE to healthcare providers. They failed miserably, and we can go down the list of how bad their response to COVID was. All I can say is this: thank the gods that the NDP government is in power right now to be able to respond to this incredible threat in a real way, in a capable way, in a dedicated way, in a caring way, and in a compassion way. Because, man, I can't even imagine what it would be if the PCs were still in their failed government, what they would do with this. If it's anything that we've seen thus far from them, they would have buried their head in the sand, and they probably just would have opened the border and opened the door for the U.S. to come into Manitoba, since they love Donald Trump so much. So thank the gods that the NDP is in government. I want to say this as well. You know, this is, as I've said, this is a time for Manitobans to come together. It's a time for Canadians to come together, and we've seen that. I don't think that we've ever seen Canadians be so incredibly proud of our country and standing up to defend our country against bullies. And one of the ways that we can, again, like I said earlier, work together at addressing and fighting against bullies and fighting against this threat is by keeping more money in Manitoba. And again, by supporting our local businesses and our producers. And we're doing just that. We're standing with them. You know, again, we've seen, you know, in the last little while, we've seen President Donald Trump not really understand the relationship between the U.S. and Canada. And, or if he does, just choosing to ignore one of the most important border relationships across the world, truly. We've had such a good trade relationship. You know, we have family that is in the US, and I'm sure that, the US have family members that are in Canada. And so to see President Donald Trump really just disparage that relationship or dismiss it or be so flippant about it is really disheartening. And again, it's important to understand that that is, his goal to ensure that Canada is left vulnerable, that Canada's economy is left vulnerable or decimated, really, so that he can annex our country. And as we've already said this afternoon, Canada will never become the 51st state. What's been left out of this conversation thus far, like in the last little while, besides the PCs, again, the PCs haven't been anywhere in this conversation, but what's been left out in that conversation about, annexing Canada, let me just be explicitly clear. Indigenous people will never let Canada become the 51st state of the US. Indigenous people have been here for generations and generations, and from time immemorial. We'll never allow that to happen. And I think that that's really important to put on the official record, that Indigenous folks will defend our territories and our lands from any foreign threat, as our people have always done, but we will continue to do that. And I would be remiss if I didn't share with the House and for folks watching that I've had many, many conversations with matriarchs saying that they would never, ever allow Canada to become a 51st state. And I stand with our people and I stand with our matriarchs. That will never happen under our watch. Again, this is a time that we can come together to support small businesses. I think that small businesses are key in respect of this fight against the US and this threat. I would be remiss if I didn't put on the record at this moment, how the former PC government, again, thank the gods that they're not in power, how they failed to adequately support small businesses and industries during the pandemic. They were nowhere to be found, or they created such a chaos and a mess that it was very difficult for small businesses to kind of navigate through. It's important to remember that in 2020, 2021 fiscal year, the former PC government underspent their own small businesses support programs. It was their program and they underspent it. And that means that less money flowed to small businesses to help during what was a global crisis. But who did get money from the PC government was the member for Fort White, again, who's now vying to become the leader for the PC, Manitoba PC caucus. The member for Fort White got $500,000 from the Brian Pallister and Heather Stephenson government. So, the PCs have shown that they don't necessarily care about any other Manitobans. They care about the Manitobans that are within their little tight circle. And that tight circle at that time included the member for Fort White, and he got $500,000. What he did with that money, nobody knows. Nobody knows what he did with that money. He's getting sued because nobody knows what he did with that money. I think that's a sad state of a commentary. But it goes to show that the PCs, if they were in this moment, they'd have no support for small businesses as we are navigating through this crisis with Donald Trump. So again, thank the gods that members opposite don't have any access to government at this time. And then, again, it's really important to note that instead of supporting small businesses and local businesses. We all remember when the PCs sent checks out, and let's be honest, those were like vote buying checks. They sent it out so that they thought the Manitobans that they got checks would vote for the PCs. That backfired, that didn't work. But remember, they sent those checks to some of the most wealthy people, and including out of province folks and corporations. So whereas we've got President Donald Trump, who is leaning into programs and threats that support the very, very wealthy. I mean, the level of wealth that the premier or the president is surrounding himself with is grotesque. You know, you've got, I don't know how many, a handful of men that have all of the world's wealth, almost pretty much all of the world's wealth in a handful of men. It is grotesque. And so that's what Brian Pallister and Heather Stephenson leaned into during the pandemic, was this vote buying scam of sending out checks to people that didn't need it. Never mind Manitobans who needed it. So in the same way that we're under this threat of these 25% tariff taxes, and Manitoba families and small businesses and industries are going to suffer the consequences of Donald Trump's choices and their buddy that they openly endorse. They didn't care during the pandemic, and they just kind of ignored those Manitobans that really needed help and needed a government that was willing to step up and make sure that they were taken care of. I think I want to just reiterate again that in that whole mess, the one person that really benefited was the member for Fort White. The one person that really benefited from the PC government, the former failed PC government, not caring about regular Manitobans and families, was the member for Fort White. The same man who is attempting to now seek the PC leadership. I would encourage Manitobans to really think about that and really think about where the PCs stand on when it comes to supporting Manitobans, particularly in times of crisis. And again, for the most part, Manitobans, I think we all agree, the Manitoba PCs are irrelevant. Nobody knows them. Nobody knows their MLAs. Nobody cares about them. Nobody listens to them. Nobody believes them. Everybody knows that they're, not capable of governing for a very, 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 very long time. But I do think it's worth mentioning that they've got these two individuals that are vying for the PC leadership, which just goes to show that even in a crisis, like the crisis that we're facing right now of 25% tariffs from President Donald Trump, even in a crisis where President Donald Trump and Elon Musk are attempting to influence our politics, our governments. And again, let's remember that Elon Musk is also attempting to influence other elections across the globe, including in Europe. Even in the midst of that crisis, the best that the PCs can come up with is Wally, who wants to release polar bears on Indigenous unsheltered individuals, and the member for Fort White. And I know that members opposite can't see the connections between the 25% tariff taxes and the executive orders that are coming from President Donald Trump and our election. I know that they can't see the connection, but there is a connection there. There's a fundamental connection to erode not only our economy, but our very democracy. there's an attempt by Donald Trump and Elon Musk to erode our democracy, to erode our morals and our values as Canadians, and to bring us down a path of what we're seeing in the U.S. And what we're seeing in the U.S. is pretty sad, pretty scary, and pretty dangerous. And I don't think we've seen the likes of what we're seeing since the two world wars. And the PCs have been missing this whole time. As I said, our government and our premier and our cabinet are all standing with Manitobans and standing with Canadians to ensure that this tariff tax, which is like a Trojan horse, if you will, into Canada, to influence the way that we lift up and support Canadian rights. You know, we were having a conversation yesterday with some of the members opposite, and we were talking about morals. And I made it very clear to members opposite that their morals are not my morals. Their morals are fundamentally different than my morals or any of our morals on this side of the House. And I reminded them yesterday that they stood against Two-Spirit and trans Manitobans. And that's precisely what Donald Trump and Elon Musk are doing right now. And they're using that 25% tariff tax as a Trojan horse, as a means of influencing the way that we understand Canada, the way that we understand our rights. And the PCs, the Manitoba PCs, are basically lock and step with Donald Trump and Elon Musk. And you know what? Steel workers in Manitoba do appreciate what I'm talking about in the House, because believe it or not, I know members opposite don't have any relationships with the steel workers, because since when did that happen? Believe it or not, steel workers of Manitoba support Two-Spirit and trans Manitobans. Steel workers of Manitoba support the right for women and gender diverse folks to access the reproductive health that they need when they need it. The steel workers stand with Manitobans. They stand in solidarity to protect our rights. So I don't know what the member, whatever that member's name is, I don't know what he's blabbing on about, but clearly he doesn't know that the steel workers of Manitoba support Manitobans. They support Canadians, and they support what is our morals and our values as Canadians and Manitobans. So yes, they do care. The steelworkers of Manitoba care. I'm going to take a little bit more water. I have so much to say, Honourable Speaker. I want folks, I want Manitobans to know that our government is investing $36.4 million in the rail line and the Port of Churchill to increase international trade and create good jobs for Manitoba. Who's doing that? Our government is doing that. I remember when years ago, during the dark days of the PC failed government, when the rail line closed down, when it had to close, the premier at the time was Brian Pallister. He wouldn't even go up to Churchill. He didn't even care about the people in Churchill. He fought to fix the rail line. He fought tooth and nail to spend even 1 cent to support the people of Churchill and to support the rail line. Again, like all of these folks here, he was nowhere to be found. He was nowhere to be found. I don't even know if he actually ever even went up to Churchill. That's how little, under the Brian Pallister regime, that he cared about Churchill citizens and cared about the potentiality for the port of Churchill. It is extraordinary what we can do in partnership when we invest real dollars to ensure that we're opening up Manitoba to international trade. Who did that? We did that. Our government did that. So while the PCs hid and while the PCs didn't care not a lick to support Manitobans in Churchill, so much so that the Premier, again, the Premier who should be supporting all Manitobans, couldn't even find it in his schedule to go up to Churchill. He could find it in his schedule to spend 8 weeks in Costa Rica, but not to go up to Churchill. Our government is doing that under the leadership of the Premier, the vision of the Premier, and the vision of our Finance Minister. Our Finance Minister is working so incredibly hard to make sure that our government is responding to these tariffs, this 25% tariff tax, and these threats. And so who has the vision and the courage for Manitoba to take us into the future where we are inviting international trade? It is our caucus here. It's our government, our cabinet. Our Premier has said many, many times that he is focused and has made a commitment, a solemn commitment and a vow to protect Manitoba during times like this. And he's focused on, we are focused on Manitoba jobs and our economy. We will certainly continue to stand with Manitobans and with Canadians. Our resolution today is about ensuring that Manitobans understand and see their government working for them. This is our first day back at session, this particular sitting, and we felt it important to bring forward a government resolution that affirms our commitment to Manitobans and to Canadians, and affirms our commitment to our small businesses, to our jobs, to our economy, to our Manitoba families, and that's what we're doing. You'll see in the next little while, our Premier and our government will be rolling out responses, additional responses to this threat that Donald Trump poses to Manitoba and to all of Canada. As folks know or should know, Manitoba's, already well in advance of this threat, which again I think is an indication of the vision of this government and the Premier, had already taken steps to mitigate that relationship between the U.S. as we knew that we were on the cusp of a U.S. election and not knowing what the outcome would be of that. And the Premier appointed former U.S. Ambassador Gary Dewar as an advisor on U.S. trade. So the Premier was already thinking about that really important relationship that Manitoba has with the U.S. And as I spoke about earlier, we enjoy a really unique relationship with the U.S. And the Premier had already been starting to think about that relationship and, appointed former Premier and former U.S. Ambassador Gary Dewar as an advisor on U.S. trade. We know that the Premier had a Business and Jobs Council delegation to Washington, D.C. We had some of our ministers that went on that delegation. It was quite successful, and it was really exciting to hear back from our colleagues when they got back from that delegation, all of the folks that they met with and the really important and incredible discussions that they had with their counterparts and with all kinds of folks in business and industry about the potential relationships with Manitoba. I'll remind Manitobans again that during their 7.5 years of dark government, they closed down all those relationships. They shut down those relationships. They closed those doors to those relationships. And why? Because again, Brian Pallister and Heather Stephenson, like all they cared about was money. They wanted to do government on the cheap. And so they didn't have the foresight to understand how important those relationships are with the US, with our next door neighbor states, with the government at the time. They didn't have the foresight to understand how important those relationships are. Could we say that maybe we wouldn't be in this predicament if there had been those relationships still ongoing and not have two successive PC premiers close the door on those relationships? Maybe, but it certainly could have helped. It certainly could have helped to have had those ongoing relationships, but they didn't. And again, because they chose to do government on the cheap, they closed down all of those businesses. The premier, of course, went to Washington in just recently and spoke with U.S. senators and governors and went for a trip to North Dakota. There's been lots of discussions with our counterparts in North Dakota. And really nurturing those important relationships, as a premier should. As a premier who is committed to Manitobans and to Canada, to our beautiful country, that's what a premier should be doing. A premier should be traveling. I know members opposite don't like when anybody travels, be it to the UN or to Washington, but that's what a government does. A government and those ministers and a premier nurture those relationships with our closest ally and our closest relationship in respect of trade. That's what governments do. That's what capable governments do. And the premier's, taken a lead on ensuring that they're there. So as I wrap up my speech, I think I still have like 15 minutes, 16 minutes, so I want us to remember this. Our premier is committed to Manitobans. Our cabinet is committed to Manitobans. Our entire caucus is committed to Manitobans, have been working incredibly hard and have been responding to this threat. Our premier, our cabinet, and our entire caucus is committed to Canada, is committed to ensuring that Canada remains Canada, and that any threat to become the 51st state, I mean, even that narrative is ridiculous, but any threat for Canada becoming a 51st state will be, all of us will stand together and fight against that. I invite members opposite, if they're, the members opposite always talk about like, oh, join us, blah, blah, blah. They wanted us to join them in their fight against trans kids. No, we're not going to do that. They wanted us to join them in their fight against searching the landfill. Not going to do that. And I know members, the leader or the interim leader of the PC caucus got up today to apologize. It's not for me to say whether or not families accept that, but as an Indigenous woman, I don't accept their apology. They don't know and they don't realize or they don't care the damage that they did for Indigenous women in this province. And so I don't accept their apology. To construct a whole political campaign on the backs of murdered Indigenous women, it just shows all of us as Indigenous women that the PCs don't care whether we live or we die. And their apology is not accepted. It's too late. Again, I don't know what the families, how they will feel. But I think that during the press conference that the families had after remains were found, the daughter of Morgan Harris, Elle, said it best when she said, do better. And I would encourage members opposite to do better, not only in respect of Indigenous women, but in respect of two-spirited and trans Manitobans, in respect of trans children, particularly now. Like, do better when we have such a threat across the border, when there are trans US citizens that are now actively looking at how they can move to Canada. That gives you a glimpse of how serious this issue is in the US and how it can spill over in Canada if people, if Canadians, if Manitobans, which includes members opposite, if they don't stand up and loudly denounce what President Donald Trump is saying and doing in the US. You can't have it both ways. You can't, again, you've been MIA, Lord knows where they've all been. They've been so silent, except, the member for Borderland when it has to do with the convoy. Then he's all up in arms. But they've been silent for months. So you can't, now that we're going back to session, now all of a sudden they found their voice and they, supposedly care about Manitoba or Canada. You can't have it one way. You can't only care about Manitoba and Canada when there's an economic threat, but not when there's a threat to our basic rights and our morals and our values and our democracy. You can't have it both ways. They are fundamentally interconnected. You can't only talk about the 25% tariff tax and not talk about trans rights in the US. You can't talk about only tariffs and not talk about reproductive justice and reproductive access in the US, which is why I've been talking about reproductive access since forever, but certainly since we've seen when Donald Trump first got in. All of those issues are connected. And to think that you can only stand up on this one issue but ignore all the other issues and somehow think that your apology today wipes out everything that you did.
Order, please. I would just remind the Government House Leader to keep her comments relevant to the matter before us here, to keep them relevant to the resolution that we're debating. While many of the things she talks about are important, please keep it focused on the resolution. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Again, we can't separate what Donald Trump is attempting, Donald Trump and, again, unelected Vice President Elon Musk is attempting to do with these tariffs. You can't separate that from what they're doing on their executive orders on trans rights, on gender, on DEI, on abortion access. You can't separate the two, or you can't separate any of those other issues from what they're trying to do with the tariffs. Let me be explicitly clear. The tariffs are a Trojan horse to decimate our economy, decimate Canadians' livelihoods, our families, so that they can get access to our minerals and resources. But don't for a second think, of course, again, let me be clear, that's never going to happen. Never, ever, 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 ever is that going to happen. But don't think that if it did, hypothetically, that that's the only thing that they want. Like, they want their ideology, their Project 2025 ridiculousness, their Project 25 campaign of hate and divisiveness. Don't think that for a second that if they had the opportunity that they would try and do that in Canada. They're already trying to do that by trying to influence our politics in Canada, by lifting up and giving shout-outs to Pierre Poilievre. It is connected. All of it is connected. And the ways in which Manitobans are struggling right now and Canadians are struggling right now to make ends meet and, with rent and food, all of it is connected. You've got the very, very rich, and again, rich doesn't even describe what we're seeing today, right now, with these billionaires. Again, even the word billionaires doesn't really fit because they're so grotesquely rich that they are wanting as much money as they can get. In the same way that when Brian Pallister was here, he wanted to do government on the cheap and keep as much money as he could at the detriment of Manitoba families. And so all of that ideology, including members opposite, who for 17 months doubled down, and today, after 17 months, they're apologizing for their stance on Morgan Harris and Mercedes Myron and Buffalo Woman. Today they're apologizing. But they're not apologizing for for doubling down on trans rights and trans kids. They're not apologizing for that. And they're not apologizing for their divisive campaign, which again is the same that we are seeing in the US right now. Those are all connected. And so let me just say this finally. For, Canadians that, potentially we're all gonna be getting ready to go to the polls, to think about who you're voting for, and who you want to stand up in respect of fighting against these 25% tariff tax. Who do you want to be standing up for you? Do you want, are you guys done? You'll have your time. Just settle down. Do you want a man who doubles down on saying that there are only two genders, when that is in contravention of our morals here in Canada? Do you want to elect a leader who will basically open the door and sell out Manitoba and sell out Canada to President Donald Trump and, again, unelected Vice President Elon Musk? Is that who we want? And I would suggest what we've seen is that's not what we want. That's not who Canada is. Canada, I just learned to saying, I'm much of a sports person, but I think it's called elbows up. That's who we are. I don't know entirely what that means, but it has something to do with hockey. But what it means is that we stand up to bullies. We stand up for our country. We will stand up for our province. We will stand up for our collective relatives. And you have to ensure that you're electing people that will do that are willing to stand up for our rights, for those things that we understand to be true as Canadians and Manitobans. It's not the PCs, it's not the Manitoba PCs, because they've already proven themselves that during the pandemic. It was chaos and crisis. They didn't know what they were doing. Like there's a pandemic, I don't know what to do. So again, thank the gods that our government is in power right now. Luckily, we've got a premier that is entirely capable. We've got a finance minister that is working incredibly hard and is one of the most capable finance ministers that we've had in Manitoba in a very, very, very long time. And we have a cabinet and a caucus that will defend our morals and what we know to be true, and will ultimately defend our democracy. Miigwech.
The honourable member for Midland.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I think we can all agree that Monday night and then yesterday was a dark and disappointing day for Canada, where decades of friendship, partnership, and economic ties were destroyed by the single stroke of a pen. Our sovereignty as Canada is being threatened. These are dangerous words that are being spoken. Canada will not be the 51st state of the US. This is a ridiculous concept that Trump does not have authority over and Canadians do not want. For months, we have been calling on the NDP government for a plan. They responded that they do not operate in hypotheticals. Well, now there is no more hiding from it because hypothetical did become a reality this week. So I do appreciate the opportunity today to put a few words on the record in response to this critical situation facing Manitoba that will be devastating for Manitoba's economy and Canada's economy. But before I speak to that, I do want to speak to the importance of Canadian pride and national pride. And I think now more than ever, we should never lose sight for our pride for Canada and our Canadian cultures and traditions. And I have stood across from members of this House, from the government, where members of their caucus has refused to sing "O Canada." And I'm warmed to see this newfound Canadian pride by the government House Leader and Minister of Families. But the hypocrisy, where she has time and time again balked at Canada. She has not posted on Canada Day about being a proud Canadian. She's posted other things about other issues. I certainly have never seen a pro-Canada, Happy Canada Day post from this minister. All while she has stood up and defended Trudeau, who has done nothing but over the past 10 years divide our country. As Conservatives, we are patriotic, we will defend our country, and we will stand up for our sovereignty. We are not a post-national country that Trudeau has been advocating for the past decade. But as is predictable, when the cameras are on and the TikTok is rolling, the NDPs jump in front and suddenly have this newfound Canadian pride. These tariffs will devastate Manitoba's economy, they will devastate Manitoba businesses, and they will devastate consumers here in Manitoba. As I spoke to earlier today in question period, I was very clear. I am against this trade war. There are no winners in a trade war with the US. There are only losers. The free market approach has and will always be the best approach, where supply and demand drives the open market and protectionist policies distort it. This has been proven time and time again. Unfortunately, NDP...
Order, please. Order, please. When this matter is again before the House, the honourable member will have 27 minutes remaining, the hour being 5 o'clock. The House is adjourned and stands adjourned until 10 a.m. tomorrow.